Hello, 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 everyone. We are live. Well, I'm live. I don't know about you guys. I'm live, though. Okay, I'm just sort of getting everything situated right now. It was a little later getting here than I would have preferred, since it's 7:35. But, you know... Alright, I need the YouTube chat as well. Okay, we're good. Alright. Oh, should be able to get it here. I need the link. But, you know... Alright, I don't need to hear myself, though. There we go. Okay. I can't see the chat. Where's the chat? There's the chat. Okay, all right, we're live. Thank you. Welcome in, everybody. We're live. We're going to be reading more of The Two Towers, being the second part of The Lord of the Rings today. Let me just go ahead and get the word out a little bit more that we're live. Move this over here, I suppose. Hey, Dylan, how's it going? Yeah, how's it going, exactly? It's going pretty good. I'm a little annoyed with the Postal Service, but other than that, we're doing good. I suppose I should take that up with Mayor Samwise, right? Hey there, No Sorry, and how's it going? We're doing it live. I appreciate the reference, and I also appreciate you cleaning it up there. And hey, Ted, thank you for another subscription there for 62 months with your one and only Twitch Prime. Thank you so much for that. I'm going to spam some emotes there for you guys on the Twitch side. Thank you for the continued support there. All right, let me just get the word out here. I was typing that up here. How's it going, Ted? All right. We are doing it. And I see emotes coming in from the YouTube side as well. You can't see that because it works a little differently, but they kind of float around the chat a little bit there too. Thank you for subscribing again for 62 months. For those of you who are watching on YouTube, it's the nomenclature between YouTube and Twitch is different. What we call subscribers on YouTube on Twitch are called followers, and what we call members on YouTube are subscribers on Twitch. So it's all different. Yes, Tolkien Thursday. What's up, Gray? All right, let me get this typed up here really quick. Two Towers. Tell you a fun story that I just remembered. When I went to first go see the film version, Peter Jackson's The Two Towers, which, you know, it had that long title, The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, you know. I was going to say there's 3 Silmarils. There's the other 2. Wait a minute. I think there's one in the sky, and then the other 2 there are the ones that are below in the earth and under the sea. Looks like meat's back on the menu. Yes. Well, we're not going to play the intro today because it's not a gaming stream. But yes, for those of you who don't watch my normal Twitch streams, which is just day-to-day gaming stuff, I have an intro that shows several amusing clips from like the past year, and one of them is me saying, "Meat's back on the menu, boys!" You know, which is a ridiculous line. We have to sit there and think that the orcs know about restaurants. And I remember I tried to somehow justify that, and I looked into the origin and the etymology of the word menu, and can I come up with some way in which that makes sense in Middle Earth? And the answer is no. No, I cannot. I was unable to. There is no meaning to the word menu beyond a selection of food that you could order from that's the oldest definition at a restaurant. Of course, being, from French, because France invented the whole concept of cuisine. Although they had menus in Rome, they just wouldn't have been called that. They wouldn't. Rome actually sort of invented fast food, if you could believe it. But yes, we're reading The Two Towers today, which is exciting. But anyway, the story I was telling, when I was going to see the Peter Jackson film, and it was the first one that when I saw The Fellowship of the Ring, it was at this very, very local theater that it had an indoor theater, and it also had the drive-up theater. And that's really, really local. Unfortunately, it no longer exists. It's not there anymore. But we do have another local theater now, and it was a long time where we didn't, and there's a whole story behind why, but which is not relevant, so I'm not going to get into it. But I saw the first film at the local thing, and when I went to see the Two Towers, I saw it at a different place. So this was, like off in New York, and at this movie theater at a mall, and I was with a friend of mine, and we're online, and it's so amazing how many people thought the title was the Twin Towers. It was just, maybe it's just because of the current events that had happened in the very recent past at the time, and that was just sort of in everybody's head. But there were so many people that were they'll have 2 tickets for the Twin Towers, or 2 adults and 1 child for the Twin Towers. And I was just thinking, you can't really think it's called that, can you? Apparently, yes. But that really goes to show you that there are a lot, and I do mean a lot, of people who went to see those films who never read the book. Hey, Scooter, how's it going? Yes, not the Twin Towers. Not the Twin Towers. So they never read this. This was just something that they, wow, this is from a long time ago. I've never read that, but the movie seems really cool. It's just, So they go to see the movie, and I know, maybe it's because the person in front of them, maybe one person makes a mistake and says the Twin Towers instead of the Two Towers, and then the next person in line is it really called that? Have I been saying it wrong? I don't want to be wrong, And of course, the teenager behind the glass is not going to be like, actually it's the Two Towers, by Tolkien, So, we're not going to have that. Otherwise the line would just take forever. But yeah. It was just interesting how many people thought it was called the Twin Towers, and I think part of it is the time period that it came out in, but it was just crazy, how many people were doing that. I even remember there was an online sort of petition almost to change the title, because there were so many people that thought that it was the Twin Towers, and they're like, well, that Peter Jackson really should change that. Hey, Sparta, how's it going? Hi. How was it going? And I think that, that of course, I remember Peter Jackson's reaction was, I can't change the title. The fans would kill me. Although, I would have changed the channel, the channel. I would have changed the title of the movie. And I'll tell you why. Not because of anything to do with the Twin Towers. I would have changed it simply because it should never have been called The Two Towers. Tolkien did not like that title. He didn't come up with it. It was his publisher that came up with it. He was confused by it. He was like, which two towers are they referring to, because there's so many different towers. And in the film, they interpret it as being Orthanc and Barad-dûr, which makes sense in the context of the film. But it's really interesting. I can grab my copy of Fellowship of the Ring here, and I'll we talked about this, months ago, but this is what the publisher said. The second part is called The Two Towers, since the events recounted in it are dominated by Orthanc, the citadel of Saruman, and the fortress of Minas Morgul that guards the secret entrance to Mordor. And that sort of makes sense, too, because you're splitting the narrative between two groups. The Fellowship splits into two, with one group having a lot to do with Orthanc, and the other trying to sneak into Mordor. But Minas Morgul is it's not a it's a tower in the sense that Minas means tower, Tower of Sorcery, but it certainly does not guard the secret way into Orthanc. I mean, the secret way into Mordor is near Minas Morgul, but Minas Morgul was not meant to guard that secret way. The tower that guards that is called Cirith Ungol, which is Cleft of the Spider. But yeah, so even that was like kind of like wrong, like and Tolkien was like, that's not correct, So really, the movie should have been called The Treason of Isengard, because that's the title that Tolkien wanted it to be called. And do I have it with me? I think I have it with me. I don't want to have to go anywhere to get it, but oh yeah, here it is. I do have a book called The Treason of Isengard. It's not this whole thing, but this is a volume that contains 4 books: The Return of the Shadow, The Treason of Isengard, The War of the Ring, and Sauron Defeated. And yes, we will be getting to these giant books one day. Right now, we're still doing the Lord. I mean, we got through the Hobbit. We're still reading the Lord of the Rings. We'll get to those giant tomes that contain all the old stuff at some future point. Yeah, it's just you're right, Ted. Isn't it just a better time? Like, you think the Two Towers, and okay, it's a little mysterious, but there really isn't an alliance between them like it was, like in the movie. The movie, it made perfect sense, but I mean, I wouldn't have made the movie that way. And if you guys were here a week ago, you remember like the way that I had Matt and Sid with me, and we talked about how we would handle a film based on the Lord of the Rings, and it would certainly not be 3 films; it would be 6, because there's so much to cover. And and some people say, well, the stuff that was cut out wasn't really that good. You don't really need, Tom Bombadil in there. And I'm like, first of all, you do. And secondly, you so many action scenes that didn't make it, so many characters that didn't make it. I mean, just the how much they shortened the Gandalf and Balrog stuff, like, yeah, it would be way cooler. It would be way more of a blockbuster. And I'm not knocking Peter Jackson for what he did, because I'll tell you, everybody thought there's no way you could make a coherent film out of The Lord of the Rings. Ralph Bakshi tried. He failed. Not because he was doing it wrong, but because the studio was breathing down his neck to condense it all into a single movie. And he couldn't even do that. And they wouldn't even let him put part 1 on the title. So, it was just a mess, Still worth watching, though. Still worth watching. Before we start, there's one more thing I want to say, and that's about next week's stream. So we talked about this. The last time we talked about like what to do was before my PC broke down and I had to get a new one and everything. So this is like, 6 months ago or so. It's like a while ago when I finished that Fellowship of the Ring video game. And we talked about a few of the different games that we could play that were Tolkien related for Thursdays, for those extra Thursdays. And I decided that I wanted to do something that, based off the film. So I think we're going to do the Two Towers video game next. We'll play the PlayStation version first. There's like a different version that you can play, and so we'll do that because that's pretty fun. My only thing is that sometimes it actually shows scenes from the films, and it could become a little bit of a copyright problem, but I don't think it's going to be that much of an issue, especially with it being so low res. Anyway, guys, let's get started here. Let's get into it. I've got plenty of water because I have... Oh, that's not the right thing. I don't have Sid and Matt with me. I'm on the wrong thing. Here we are. I have plenty of water here because I have to do the Gollum voice today. So, where we left off... I can't see the YouTube chat. Where'd the YouTube chat go? There it is. The Two Towers is a great game. It's a great game. A little bit challenging, but not in a bad way, you know? The Return of the King was even better because you got to play as more than just 3 characters. Because really, if you play the Two Towers, which also covers some stuff from the Fellowship of the Ring, you're just playing as Aragorn and Legolas and Gimli the whole time, and there's not much of a difference between them. All right, so we were in Book 4, Chapter 3, I think? Book 4, Chapter 3? Yeah, I was right. The Black Gate is closed. Here we go. Before the next day dawned, their journey to Mordor was over. The marshes and the desert were behind them. Before them, darkling against a pallid sky, the great mountains reared their threatening heads. Upon the west of Mordor marched the gloomy range of Ithilien, the Mountains of Shadow, and upon the north the broken peaks and barren ridges of Ered Lithui, grey as ash. But as these ranges approached one another, being indeed but parts of one great wall about the mournful plains of Lithlad and of Gorgoroth, and the bitter inland sea of Nirnan amidmost, they swung out long arms northward, and between these arms there was a deep defile. This was Cirith Gorgor, the haunted pass, the entrance to the land of the enemy. High cliffs lowered... Oh, hold on one moment. I just realized the music's still playing. We got to get rid of that. Because that'll drive me crazy. That was just there to have something in the background while I talk to you guys. I should have shut that off first. I'm sorry about that. You love the monthly visit to the fireplace. There might be more than one this month, Walter. More than one. I'm sorry, Dylan. More than one reading this month, just because there's so many Thursdays this month. So we might be returning in 2 weeks. All right, let me just pause there, by the way. He mentions here Ithilien, and he gives a translation, Mountains of Shadow, and then the other mountain range, Ered Lithui, just mentions grey as ash. If you're wondering what Ered Lithui means, it's literally just Ash Mountain. Ash Mountain. So let's continue there. I'm sorry about that. This was Cirith Gorgor, the haunted pass, the entrance to the land of the enemy. High cliffs lowered upon either side, and thrust forward from its mouth were 2 sheer hills, black-boned and bare. Upon them stood the teeth of Mordor, 2 towers strong and tall. In days long past they were built by the men of Gondor in their pride and power, after the overthrow of Sauron in his flight, lest he should seek to return to his old realm. But the strength of Gondor failed, and men slept, and for long years the towers stood empty. Then Sauron returned. Now the watchtowers, which had fallen into decay, were repaired and filled with arms and garrisoned with ceaseless vigilance. Stony-faced they were, with dark window-holes staring north and east and west, and each window was full of sleepless eyes. Across the mouth of the pass from cliff to cliff the Dark Lord had built a rampart of stone. In it there was a single gate of iron, and upon its battlements sentinels paced unceasingly. Beneath the hills on either side the rock was bored into 100 caves and maggot holes. There a host of orcs lurked, ready at a signal to issue forth like black ants going to war. None could pass the teeth of Mordor and not feel their bite unless they were summoned by Sauron or knew the secret passwords that would open up the mountain, the black gate of his land. The 2 hobbits gazed at the towers and the wall in despair. Even from a distance they could see in the dim light the movement of the black guards upon the wall and the patrol before the gate. They lay now peering over the edge of a rocky hollow beneath the outstretched shadow of the northmost buttress of Ithilien. Winging the heavy air in a straight flight, a crow, maybe, would have flown but a furlong from their hiding place to the black summit of the nearer tower. A faint smoke curled above it as if fire smouldered in the hill beneath. Day came, and the fallow sun blinked over lifeless ridges of Ered Lithui. Then suddenly the cry of brazen-throated trumpets was heard. From the watchtowers they blared, and far away, from hidden holds and outposts in the hills, came answering calls. And further still, remote but deep and ominous, there echoed in the hollow land beyond the mighty horns and drums of Barad-dûr. Another dreadful day of fear and toil had come to Mordor, and the night guards were summoned to their dungeons and deep halls, and the day guards, evil-eyed and fell, were marching to their posts. Steel gleamed dimly over the battlement. "Well, here we are," said Sam. "Here's the gate, and it looks to me as if that's about as far as we're ever going to get. My word, but how the gaffer would have a thing or two to say if he saw me now. Often he'd say I'd come to a bad end if I didn't watch my step, he did. But now I don't suppose I'll ever see the old fellow again. He'll miss his chance to say I told you so, Sam, more's the pity. He could go on telling me as long as he's got breath, if only I could see his old face again. But I'd have to get a wash first, or he wouldn't know me. I suppose it's no good asking, what way do we go now? We can't go no further, unless we want to ask the orcs for a lift."
"No, no," Gollum hissed. "No use. We can't go further. Smeagol said so. He said, we'll go to the gate, then we'll see. And we do see, oh yes, my precious, we do see. Smeagol knew hobbits could not go this way. Oh yes, Smeagol knew."
"Then what the plague did you bring us here for?" said Sam, not feeling in the mood to be just or reasonable.
"Master said so. Master says bring us to the gate. So good Smeagol does so. Master says so. Wise master."
"I did," said Frodo. His face was grim and set, but resolute. He was filthy, haggard, and pinched with weariness, but he cowered no longer, and his eyes were clear. "I said so because I purpose to enter Mordor. And I know no other way, therefore I shall go this way. I do not ask anyone to go with me."
"No, no, master,"
wailed Gollum, pawing at him and seeming in great distress.
"No use that way. No use. Don't take the precious to him. He'll eat us all if he gets it. Eat all the world. Keep it nice, master. Be kind to Smeagol. Don't let him have it. Or go away. Go to nice places and give it back to little Smeagol. Yes, yes, master, give it back. Smeagol will keep it safe. He will do lots of good, especially to nice hobbits. Hobbits, go home. Don't go to the gate."
"I am commanded to go to the land of Mordor, and therefore I shall go," said Frodo. "If there is only one way, then I must take it. What comes after must come." Let's pause here for a moment to talk about Gollum's sort of, thoughts here. Now, we talked a lot about the film version, and I'm going to just sort of go back to that just very briefly. Frodo did something that was both very smart and also very foolish in the film, in that he told Gollum that he was going to destroy the ring. And this sets up, of course, Gollum's later betrayal, which is going to happen inevitably anyway, because he's so consumed by the One Ring, he can't conceive of anybody wanting to destroy it, even if that means that he might have some relief. And we find out later that it wouldn't have really even given him much relief, because it didn't give Frodo any relief to have the ring destroyed. And we're going to talk a lot about, Frodo's psychiatric episodes in, The Return of the King. But let's stay here for a moment and let's talk about where Frodo is right now. He's not telling Gollum anything that Gollum doesn't absolutely need to know. And right now, Gollum is under the impression that if Frodo has the One Ring and he's going into Mordor, then he's bringing it to Sauron. He's giving Sauron his ring back. And Frodo here says something very interesting. He says, "I am commanded to do so." And he doesn't say who commanded him to do so. And it's not even really the truth. He's not really commanded to do so. He volunteered to do so. Now, once he volunteered, Elrond did tell him that this is a thing that you're sort of locked into. Everybody else can say at any point during the quest, "I'm done." But you, since you've chosen this path, you have to see it through to the end. So Frodo could interpret that as being a command to go to Mordor. And hey, Deb, But that's not really, like I said, it's not the whole truth. He's being very vague with Gollum. Like I said, in the movie, telling Gollum that he was going to destroy the ring is a smart thing to do for one reason. And that's so that Gollum doesn't get it in his head that Frodo is aligned with Sauron. Because if there's one being in the world that Gollum absolutely hates, it's Sauron. He hates him. So, that was smart. But it was also foolish in a way, because obviously Gollum, he doesn't want the ring to be destroyed. He wants to get it back. And he's even saying here, no, don't bring it to him. Keep it for yourself. Or even better, give it to me. And I'll take it somewhere and he'll never find it. And that's the truth. He's not being deceitful here. Hey, Moogle, if he got his hands on the ring, whether he got it from Frodo or if Frodo just, somehow gave it to him, which we know he wouldn't even be able to do that even if he wanted to do it. But let's entertain that thought for a moment and say that he got a hold of it somehow. He really would do that. He really would just disappear. He would go underground somewhere, and Sauron would probably never get the ring back. And that would be the worst thing that could happen, other than Sauron getting the ring, because then it's not destroyed and he wins. He doesn't need the ring to win the war. He's already winning the war. And eventually, he's going to take over. Even if, let's say he loses the war, he's going to just bide his time and come back. And there's going to be less elves in Middle-earth, and the population of men is going to be lower, and they're going to be even less effective. So basically what I'm getting at is that Sauron is thinking in the long term, because he is, I don't even want to use the word immortal because it's so limiting. He's eternal. He's angelic. He is a fallen angel, and unless he finds himself in the predicament that Morgoth found himself in, he is going to always be there. And he is always going to return, and eventually he's going to win. And the only way that he could ever be stopped in a really permanent way is to deprive him of power. And the only way to do that is to destroy the One Ring. So, but Gollum doesn't know this. And that's what I'm getting at. Gollum has no idea what Frodo's quest is. He really doesn't know. Frodo is just saying, show me the way into Mordor. And now Gollum has fulfilled his role. He's showed him the way into Mordor. And he's even saying, I'm going through that gate. And you know what, Gollum? You don't have to come with me. Sam, you don't have to come with me. But Gollum is really freaked out by the thought of Sauron getting the ring back. He's saying he'll eat us. He'll eat the world. And he doesn't literally mean that he's going to be cooked and eaten by Sauron. Sauron doesn't eat. It's sort of a silly thing to say, but it's metaphor. He's using metaphor. He's saying he's just going to consume everything. He's just going to become the ruler of the whole world and, metaphorically speaking, swallow everything up. And when I say the whole world, I mean it, because the Undying Lands isn't even technically part of the world anymore. So unless that comes crashing back down and, hits the ocean and lands where it used to be, which is not going to happen, obviously. Yeah, Sauron could conceivably take over all of Middle-earth. And at this point in Tolkien's history, there isn't another continent on the planet other than Middle-earth. Numenor is gone. The Undying Lands is separated from the world. And whatever continent would arise that would represent the Americas off to the west hasn't risen yet. That's something that would come later. All right, let's continue here. Sam said nothing. The look on Frodo's face was enough for him. He knew that words of his were useless. And after all, he never had any real hope in the affair from the beginning. But being a cheerful hobbit, he had not needed hope as long as despair could be postponed. Now they were come to the bitter end, but he had stuck to his master all the way. That was what he had chiefly come for, and he could still stick with him. His master would not go to Mordor alone. Sam would go with him. At any rate, they would get rid of Gollum. Gollum, however, did not intend to be got rid of yet. He knelt at Frodo's feet, wringing his hands and squeaking.
"Not this way, master," he pleaded. "There is another way. Oh, yes, indeed, there is another way. Darker, more difficult to find, more secret. But Smeagol knows it. Let Smeagol show you."
And just to acknowledge the chat, hi to Tommy and Moogle with the watch streak, 370 streams in a row. Look at that. "Another way," said Frodo doubtfully, looking down at Gollum with searching eyes.
"Yes, yes, indeed, there was another way. Smeagol found it. Let's go and see if it's still there."
You have not spoken of this before."
"No, Master did not ask. Master did not say what he meant to do. He does not tell poor Smeagol. He says, 'Smeagol, take me to the gate,' and then goodbye. Smeagol can run away and be good. But now he says, 'I purpose to enter Mordor this way.' So Smeagol is very afraid. He does not want to lose nice Master. And he promised, Master made him promise, to save the precious. But Master is going to take it to him, straight to the Black Land. If Master will go this way, so Smeagol must save them both, and he thinks of another way that there was once upon a time. Nice Master. Smeagol, very good, always helps."
And thank you. Gigahan, am I saying that correctly? Thank you. Thank you very much. Let me just drink some water here, because that voice is tough to do. I do have extra water. Sam frowned. If he could have bored holes in Gollum with his eyes, he would have done. His mind was full of doubt. To all appearances, Gollum was genuinely distressed and anxious to help Frodo. But Sam, remembering the overheard debate, found it hard to believe that the long-submerged Smeagol had come out on top. That voice, at any rate, had not had the last word in the debate. Sam's guess was that Smeagol and Gollum halves, or what his own mind he called Slinker and Stinker, had made a truce and a temporary alliance. Neither wanted the enemy to get the ring. Both wished to keep Frodo from capture, and under their eye, as long as possible at any rate, as long as Stinker still had this chance of laying hands on his precious. Whether there really was another way to Mordor, Sam doubted. The hint here of let me just answer Tommy's question of what Gollum sounds like. Is the sound that he makes that is deep in his throat. That's the only really hint that we have. The voice that that I'm doing is like very based on what Andy Serkis did, and he developed that himself. He's absolutely taken the path before. Because he doesn't just know of Shelob Giahem, he's intimately familiar with her. He's spoken with her. He's worshipped her. He's bonded with her. He's become friends with her, and as far as evil creatures can even become friends, And I always thought that the reason that they would bond at all is probably due to the fact that they've both done something in that they have a similar interest. They've both eaten orcs, and they both don't like the taste of orcs. And hey, Medio, how's it going? So yeah, he's the way he's even doing it, like, let's see if I remember. Let's see if it's still there. It was quite a while ago, though. As a matter of fact, and there's a common theory in the Tolkien community, and it's a terrible, terrible theory that makes absolutely no sense, is that Gollum killed Frodo's parents, which just is not true. There's no way that it's true. And the reason that we absolutely, positively know that it's not true is because Gollum was specifically with Shelob at the time that Frodo's parents died. So it took him a really long time to get to Mordor, and then he got in there and he got captured and tortured, so it was a really bad time for him. And even though he was let out by Sauron and he and all the orcs and everything were pretty much told to just ignore him and let him go. He, as far as he's concerned, he's staying away from anything to do with Sauron, so he would definitely find a secret path out of Mordor. And then reason, well, you can go in that way as well. So there you have it. Let's continue here. Let's see, where was I? Here we are. And it's a good thing neither half of the old villain don't know what Master means to do, he thought. If he knew that Mr. Frodo was trying to put an end to his precious for good and all, there'd be trouble pretty quick, I'd bet. Anyhow, old Stinker is so frightened of the enemy, and he's under orders of some kind from him, or was, and he'd give us away rather than be caught helping us, and rather let his precious be melted, maybe. At least that's my idea, and I hope the Master will think it out carefully. He's as wise as any, but he's soft-hearted, that's what he is. It's beyond any Gamgee to guess what he'll do next. Frodo did not answer Gollum at once. While these doubts were passing through Sam's slow but shrewd mind, he stood gazing out towards the dark cliff of Cirith Gorgor. The hollow in which it had taken refuge delved in the side of the low hill, at which some little height above the long trench-like valley that lay between it and the outer buttresses of the mountains. In the midst of the valley stood the black foundations of the western watchtower. By morning light, the roads that converged upon the gate of Mordor could now be clearly seen, pale and dusty. One winding back northwards, another dwindling eastwards into the mists that clung about the feet of Ered Luthuli, and a third that ran towards him. As it bent sharply around the tower, it entered a narrow defile, and passed not far below the hollow where he stood. Westward to his right it turned, skirting the shoulders of the mountains, and went off southwards into the deep shadows that mantled all the western sides of the Efelduath. Beyond his sight, he journeyed on the narrow land between the mountains and the great river. As he gazed, Frodo became aware that there was a great stir and movement on the plain. It seemed as if whole armies were on the march, though for the most part they were hidden by the reeks and fumes drifting from the fens and wastes beyond. But here and there he caught the gleams of spears and helmets, and over the levels behind the roads horsemen could be seen riding in many companies. He remembered his vision from afar upon Amon Hen, so few days before, though now it seemed many years ago. Then he knew that the hope that he had for one wild moment stirred in his heart was vain. The trumpets had not rung in challenge, but in greeting. This was no assault upon the Dark Lord by the men of Gondor, risen like avenging ghosts from the graves of valor long passed away. These were men of other race, out of the wide Eastlands, gathering to the summons of their overlord, armies that had encamped before his gate by night and now marched in to swell his mounting power. As if suddenly made fully aware of the peril of their position, alone in the growing light of day, so near to this vast menace, Frodo quickly drew his frail grey hood close upon his head and stepped down into the dell. Then he turned to Gollum. "Smeagol," he said, "I will trust you once more. Indeed, it seems that I must do so, and that it is my fate to receive help from you, where I least looked for it, and your fate to help me, whom you long pursued with evil purpose. So far you have deserved well of me, and have kept your promise truly. Truly, I say and mean," he added with a glance at Sam, "for twice now we have been in your power, and you have done no harm to us. Nor have you tried to take from me what you once sought. May the third time prove the best, but I warn you, Smeagol, you are in danger."
Yes, yes, master, said Gollum. Dreadful danger. Smeagol's bones shake to think of it, but he doesn't run away. He must help nice master.
Highflower. "I did not mean the danger that we all share," said Frodo. "I mean a danger to you yourself alone. You swore a promise by which you call the precious. Remember that. I will hold you to it. But it will seek a way to twist it to your own undoing. Already you are being twisted. You revealed yourself to me just now foolishly. Give it back to Smeagol, you said. Do not say that again. Do not let that thought grow in you. You will never get it back, but the desire of it may betray you to a bitter end. You will never get it back. In the last need, Smeagol, I should put on the precious, and the precious mastered you long ago. If I, wearing it, were to command you, you would obey, even if it were to leap from a precipice, or to cast yourself into the fire, and such would be my command, so have a care, Smeagol." By the way, I must have seen the films like 100 times, and you get used to just like that sort of passive, timid Frodo from the films. I really wish that we got the fierce Frodo. Towards the end of the book, and I don't just mean the Two Towers, I mean the Lord of the Rings, Frodo becomes more passive, not because he becomes timid and useless, but because he's just so weary and just so done with all the violence and everything that has happened, and he's just really just ready for it all to be over. But here we see, and I said this last time that we met and we did this, that Frodo's very grim in the Two Towers, and he says some pretty dark things. And he did that there, right there. He was very fierce there. Okay, Tommy, just not that you said anything too wrong, but just a reminder for Thursday streams, just to keep it a little PG here. Oh, by the way, I know this isn't related to anything, but I wanted to show Flower and Moogle on the Twitch side. What I got in the mail today. Although they might have seen it on Discord, but this came in the mail today, so it's a little banged up. But I finally have that. So I want to show you guys that. Okay. All right, let's continue here. Oh, I can't see the YouTube chat. What happened? Where did it go? Oh, there it is. Okay. Also, I like the emotes. They're very thematic of the spider, the web, and the devil. You know, Sheila, Sauron. Not that Sauron's a devil. He is a devil. He's not the devil. There's actually one of the few audio clips of Tolkien that we have where he answers that question, is Sauron the devil? And he says no, but he knew the devil, you know. So I actually did one of the videos that I did quite a while ago for YouTube was entitled "Is Sauron the Devil?" And that was like actually when my channel started to blow up. That's when we started getting a lot of views and we started getting massive influxes of subscribers. So it's definitely a subject that people are interested to hear. Is Sauron Satan? No, he's not, but he knows him. You know, he's close to him. All right, let's continue here. Sam looked at his master with approval, but also with surprise. There was a look in his face and a tone in his voice that he had not known before. It had always been a notion of his that the kindness of dear Mr. Frodo was of such a high degree that it must imply a fair measure of blindness. Of course, he also firmly held in the incompatible belief that Mr. Frodo was the wisest person in the world, with the possible exception of old Mr. Bilbo and of Gandalf. Gollum, in his own way, and with much more excuse as his acquaintance was much briefer, may have made a similar mistake, confusing kindness and blindness. At any rate, this speech abashed and terrified him. He grovelled on the ground and could speak no clear words, but "Nice, master." And here, just to comment on that, and this is something that you see a lot. This happens in a lot of literature. It happens in films. It happens in real life, is that people think if you're kind, then you're weak. You know, and even they're like, he's not using the word weak. He's using the word blind, right? And he's saying if he's kind to Gollum, then surely he must be blind to the very obvious fact that Gollum is evil. And Sam, and I should say the narrator, which at this point is Sam, is pointing out the incongruity there, that these two beliefs that he's always held are not compatible. One is that he's just blind to the fact that Gollum is evil. He doesn't realize how evil he is. Whereas on the other hand, he's also the smartest and wisest person, you know, other than like Bilbo and Gandalf. Well, here's the thing. That's true and also not true at the same time. Yes, compromises have to be made when you take a 1,200-page book and you turn it into 12 hours of film. Compromises have to be made when you take something that really should be 6 movies and you squash it into 3 films. However, cutting out certain things is fine, you know, cutting out certain characters and all that. But I'm talking about the character of Frodo being very different. There are certain characters that he nailed. Sam was perfect. Gandalf was perfect. to a lesser extent, Aragorn was perfect. Legolas was perfect. Saruman, there was some issues there, but pretty great. There are a lot of characters that he absolutely nailed, and then there are characters that he absolutely destroyed, and Frodo is unfortunately on that list. And, you could forgive that he screwed up Gimli, you can forgive that he screwed up Faramir and Denethor, but Frodo is sort of like the main character. So it isn't so much that because it was unfilmable, Frodo has to become weak and ineffectual. It's really more that Jackson just has a different vision of how the story plays out and how characters grow. And that's really what it comes down to with Aragorn as well, is that he wants to show the characters starting out in one place and ending up in another place. And I'm not just talking about physically, I'm talking about mentally as well. Whereas Tolkien's thought is more that Frodo is having to find his own strength, but it's also already there. He just has to reach really deep down and take it like that. You know what I mean? And I think that, Peter Jackson's mistake is the same mistake that Sam makes. And the same mistake that Gollum makes, and thinks that, well, Frodo's a very kind character, so therefore he's weak. And I would have liked to have seen him be braver, because he's incredibly brave. He's going to Mordor, So it's sort of like, it's just strange, that we see him being carried, in the first film, being carried around by Arwen like a football. You know what I mean? And just to be so weak from being poisoned that he's just become completely useless, when that's the part in the book where you start to realize how strong Frodo is, because wow, he's poisoned, but he's still going. You know what I mean? And that was an opportunity that could have been done. Like, wow, he's like, it could have just been a line from Aragorn, like, wow, you hobbits are really tough. I can't believe like a grown man would probably be dead at this point and Frodo's still going, and then he stood up to the Witch King like that. So, like it's this sort of like excuse that the films are compromised because the book is unfilmable isn't so much true. But that also doesn't diminish the monumental thing that Peter Jackson did in creating these films. And I was talking about it a little bit before you got here, Gihan, because I was talking about how there were so many people, like when I went to see the films, that had never read the book, because so many people thought the second movie was called The Twin Towers. So clearly they didn't know the book. They just thought this is going to be a good movie. And it really was. So, I can understand, making a movie for everybody, but also it's also part of like the director's vision too. And there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. It's just like I would have done it differently, but there's nothing wrong with it. And I always tell people there's Peter Jackson's The Lord of the Rings, and there's Ralph Bakshi's The Lord of the Rings, and there's Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings, and they're three different things, Let's continue here. I'm just going on and on too long here. There's a lot to talk about of the psychology of the characters in this section now. All right, let's see. Where were we? Frodo waited patiently for a while. Then he spoke again, less sternly. Come now, Gollum or Smeagol, if you wish. Tell me of this other way, and show me, if you can, what hope there is in it, enough to justify me in turning aside from my own path. I am in haste. But Gollum was in a pitiable state, and Frodo's threat had quite unnerved him. It was not easy to get any clear account out of him amid his mumblings and squeakings and the frequent interruptions in which he crawled on the floor and begged them both to be kind to poor little Smeagol. After a while he grew a little calmer, and Frodo gathered bit by bit that if a traveller followed the road that turned west of Ethelduath, he would come in time to a crossing in a circle of dark trees. On the right, a road went down to Osgiliath and the bridges of the Anduin. In the middle of the road went on southwards.
On, said Gollum. We never went that way. But they say it goes 100 leagues until you can see the great water that is never still. There were lots of fishes there, and big birds eat fishes, nice birds, but we never went there at last, no, we never had a chance. And further still, there were more lands, they say, but the yellow face is very hot there. There are seldom any clouds, and the men are fierce and have dark faces. We do not want to see that land.
No, said Frodo. But do not wander from your road. What of the third turning?
Oh yes, there is a third way, said Gollum. That is the road to the left. And once it begins to climb up, winding and climbing back towards the tall shadows. When it turns round the black rock, you see it. Suddenly you see it above you, and you want to hide.
See it? See it? What will you see?
The old fortress. Very old, very horrible now. We used to hear tales from the south when Smeagol was young, long ago. Oh yes, we used to tell tales and tales of evening, sitting on the banks of the great river in the Willow Lands, when the river was younger too. Gollum! Gollum!
He began to weep and mutter. The hobbits waited patiently.
Tales out of the south,
Gollum went on again.
About the tall men with the shining eyes, and the houses like hills of stone, and the silver crown of their king, and his white tree. Wonderful tales. They built very tall towers, and one they raised was silver white, and in it there was a stone like the moon, and round it were great white walls. Oh yes, there were many tales about the Tower of the Moon.
That would be Minas Ithil, that Isildur the son of Elendil built, said Frodo. It was Isildur who cut off the finger of the enemy.
Yes, he has only 4 on the black hands, but they are enough, said Gollum, shuddering. And he hated Isildur city.
What does he not hate? Said Frodo. But what has the Tower of the Moon to do with us? Let me stop there just to say how much I love that scene. There's 2 reasons that I love it. One is you get the closest thing that we'll ever get to a physical description of what Sauron looked like in the Third Age. Like, we know what he looked like in the past, but in the Third Age they said he's hideous, and the fact that he's missing a finger, even he put his body back together, but he still can't get that finger back, and that his hand is black and probably, burnt looking and everything is pretty horrific. And obviously Gollum is very frightened because he was tortured by Sauron. The other reason is just Frodo's snark, where, Gollum is like, he hated Isildur city, and Frodo's just basically, well, he hates everything. So what has that got to do? What doesn't he hate, And that's goes into the nature of evil, because to be evil is to hate, Evil doesn't love anything. It doesn't even love evil. Morgoth didn't love anything. Sauron, he only loves the feeling of controlling others, which is not a good thing, So it's just sort of like I just love Frodo's snark there. I just love Frodo. What doesn't he hate? That's just always a great line for me.
Well, master, there it was, and there it is, the tall tower and the white houses and the wall, but not nice now, not beautiful. He conquered it long ago. It's a very terrible place now. Travelers shiver when they see it. They creep out of sight, they avoid its shadow. But master will have to go that way. That is the only other way, for the mountains are lower there, and the old road goes up and up until it reaches a dark pass at the top, and then it goes down, down, down again to Gorgoroth.
His voice sank into a whisper, and he shuddered. But how will that help us? Asked Sam. Surely the enemy knows about his own mountains, and that road will be guarded as close as this. The tower isn't empty, is it?
Oh, no, not empty, said Gollum. It seems empty, but it isn't, oh no. Very dreadful things live there. Orcs, yes, always orcs, but worse things live there too. The road climbs right under the shadow of the walls and passes the gate. Nothing moves on the road that they don't know about. The things inside know. The Silent Watchers.
No, he absolutely was not you're correct there. He was not a disembodied spirit. I mean, he could at any point become a disembodied spirit because he's not stuck in his body. But he did have a body. He did have a body when he was the necromancer. He has a body when he tortured Gollum. Gollum described him and everything. But there was never a great physical description of Third Age Sauron. We get descriptions of when he made himself appear beautiful. And we're told in the Akalabeth that after Akalabeth happens, he can't make himself appear beautiful, but he still can make himself appear very frightening and very terrible and very horrific. So that's what we're dealing with. So and if you notice, you don't usually get very good physical descriptions of any character. We're told, I think the one character whose physical attributes are described the most, actually there's two of them. One is Gandalf and the other is Aragorn. Anybody else, we're usually just told hair color and eye color. Sometimes we're given a height. We know Galadriel is blonde and pretty. That's all we have to go on her. Celeborn, her husband, he's got silver hair. That's really all we have to go on her. The hobbits, it almost never mentions like what they actually look like. They probably all have brown hair because almost all hobbits have brown hair. We know that Sam had a blonde daughter, but that's a completely different thing. That is to do something with the blessing of the Malern tree and all that. We'll talk about that, in the Return of the King. Faramir and Boromir had black hair. And that's as far as it goes. So I think Tolkien, when it comes to it, sometimes he'll describe the scenery very, very, very detailed. But then when it comes to describing physical attributes of people, it's sort of like, you'll get an eye color, a hair color, a height. Maybe you'll get a description of skin tone, or you'll just sort of describe what sort of clothes they're wearing, right? But Three Dirty Dwarves. Wasn't that a PC game, Moogle? A PC game? Three Dirty Dwarves, or am I thinking of something else? You always thought that Smeagol was being metaphorical when he described the missing fingers of Sauron during torture, as he was aware of the legend of Isildur cutting of fingers. No, I don't think he's being metaphorical, because he shuddered. And we have to remember that what weapon does Sauron use, right? When he goes out and he actually fights physically, the weapon that he uses is his hands. And we get this description of how did Gil-galad die? Irenian Gil-galad, High King of the Elves, the Noldor, right? Is that Sauron grabbed him by the neck and burnt him. And Isildur cuts the ring off of him. He cuts his finger off, and he says that the heat of Sauron's hand was so great that it caused the ring to light up and show the script on it. And then after it left the heat of Sauron's hand, it fades away. So we know that his touch is absolutely terrible. So when Gollum talks about Sauron's hand, and he talks about what it was like to be touched by him, he really does mean that the Dark Lord used his hand to touch Gollum, and that's how he tortured him. And so it really is very, very literal. Okay, hold on a second. I'm being told that the stream died, but it seems to be fine on my end. Hold on a second. Let's see what's going on here. Let's put the book aside. Is it okay on YouTube? Twitch is telling me the stream is having issues, but I don't see any issues. Okay, obviously there's an issue. What happened? What happened? 1 second, guys. All right, we should be back. I'm not sure what happened there. I'm very sorry, guys. It looked like there was an issue with the connection. We should be back now, although on YouTube, I'm seeing somebody else's stream. I'm going to have to navigate back to mine. I don't know quite what happened there, but something very weird happened. All right, we're back. Okay, the YouTube chat is completely gone. I'm just going to, let me test it out here. Test. Okay, it's working. I'm not sure what happened there. I'm sorry, guys. Of course, we had a lot of views, and that had to happen. So I'm not sure what happened. You thought it was your wife? Yeah, I don't know what happened. It was the weirdest thing is that on the Twitch side, somebody said, hey, the stream died. And on the YouTube side, it just started playing some other stream. I'd never seen anything like that before. And I don't know. I don't know. What was the last thing you guys heard me say before it went down? Because I was in the middle of answering a question here. I've never seen YouTube do that before. Like, it's one thing to disconnect, but like I have the stream playing and then it's sort of just like jumped to some other person's stream. Hopefully so, but we had like 50 people in here. You know what I mean? That's terrible. That's terrible. We had like 50 people and for it to go down like that. Okay, well, I'm glad, Deborah. I'm glad you found your way back here, because it just seemed to just stop and decide that the URL that I was using now belonged to another streamer. Let me see if I click on the old URL, if it brings me up or if it brings somebody else up. Oh, it brings up the previous stream. Can I use the chat there? Is that possible? So that I can inform people of what happened? I swear, the way that YouTube works is so bizarre. I don't see a way to do that. Okay, yeah, we're back. I don't know what happened there, but apparently we had some sort of like hiccup that caused the stream to disconnect, and it even started playing somebody else, which I've never seen it do that before. All right, well, we're back. Oh, okay, so we were talking about Sauron's physical body and how it absolutely is real. He does have a physical body. And Gollum's being real because he was tortured by the Black Hand. And the thing is like when is Gollum as a character speaking to Frodo and speaking to Sam, the Two Towers is too potent for YouTube to handle? It's the 6th time we're doing it. And this is terrible because now after this, I have to take the two live, because it's going to be 2 different lives. I have to take them down, edit together the videos, and upload it instead of just leaving it there. So it's annoying for me, especially since I have a whole lot of other stuff to do. But going back to the idea of Sauron's physical form, he absolutely 100% has a physical form. And we knew that even, as early as The Hobbit, because he was the necromancer. But Gollum is the most honest when he's scared out of his wits. And Frodo threw a scare into him. Frodo made him really just question everything. Because he's got this thing where he's got this plan that he's going to lead them, to Shelob. And Shelob's going to eat them, and then he's going to get the ring back. But Frodo made him question it all because he's thinking, whoa, hold on. This guy means business. This guy is angry with me. And he's saying that he might actually put on the ring and make me jump off a cliff. And now here's the thing. Hey, Chewie. Okay. All right. We're fully back here. The view count is a lot lower. We had 50 people watching, and then that had to happen. We had to have a problem. You know what I mean? We're down to 20 now. It's just the way it is. But anyway, could Frodo actually do that? Let's talk about that very briefly. Could Frodo put on the One Ring and give a command to Gollum and make Gollum throw himself into a fire or throw himself off a cliff or something like that? No, he could not do that. And I'll tell you why he could not do that. He couldn't do that because he wouldn't really want to do that, first off. And he's not strong enough to do that. And we know this because Galadriel said so. Galadriel instructed Frodo on how to actually use the One Ring. Not just to put it on and be invisible, but to use it to command somebody and force them to do something. And she said, you would have to become a lot stronger than you are right now, and you would have to train your mind in the domination of others. And what she's basically saying is you would have to become like Sauron, powerful and with a mind bent to domination. And Frodo, for all his threats and all the dark and grim things that he says in The Two Towers, is not like Sauron. It's not even in him to become like that. I don't even think that there's any hobbit that could really become truly like Sauron. The closest that we got was like Lothal Sackville Baggins. And he was more of a petty thug who got a little taste of power, you know? Oh, man. Okay, so I so hate the Harry Potter references, but I hate that I know this, but it wasn't that character. I hate that I know that. It was Mad-Eye Moody that said that. Actually, maybe they both said it. I don't know. It's been a really long time. But I'm sorry, Dev. I guess that did happen too. I was thinking more of that classroom scene where, well, it wasn't even Moody because he was like an imposter, but he said you could all aim your wands at me and say it all at once and it wouldn't do anything because you have to mean it. And that's sort of like, you know, another thing she took from Tolkien, I guess, is that to really do something like that, to really dominate somebody, you have to really want to. You have to really want to do it. And you have to be strong because just wanting it isn't enough. You have to also have a greater will than they have. And I'll tell you something. Frodo does not have a greater will than Gollum. And I can say that with 100% certainty. And I'll tell you how I can say that with 100% certainty is that Sauron barely has a greater will than Gollum. Gollum is so indomitable that Sauron was kind of afraid of him. That's what Gandalf said, at least. And I tend to believe what Gandalf says because he's the smartest guy in the whole thing. You know what I mean? Him and Olmo, right? Him and Olmo are like the two characters that pretty much got it all figured out. So yeah, nobody's controlling Gollum with the ring. You know what I mean? Frodo is bluffing. However, and he knows that he's bluffing, but Gollum doesn't know that he's bluffing because Frodo's really good at it. And I think he's even got Sam like, whoa, hold on a second. What are you saying, man? You're doing too much, you know? I think, here's the thing. I think you might be thinking about the film, but it's been so long and I'm not going to read those books again. But so I don't know. But I was very familiar with them. Like if you asked me that like 15 years ago, I would have been able to tell you with certainty. But now I'm like, I'm not entirely sure actually. So you might actually be right there. It might be the film, it might be the movie. I don't know. Let's continue here though. And hopefully the Two Towers, the power of it doesn't crash the stream again. Let's see, where were we? About whether or not Cirith Ungol is guarded. That's where we were. let's see. Just so, said Sam, not to be put off. And so, are we to walk up and knock at their gate and ask if we're on the right road for Mordor? Or are they too silent to answer? It's not sense. We might as well do it here and save ourselves a long tramp.
Don't make jokes about it,
hissed Gollum.
It isn't funny, oh no, not amusing. It's not sense to try and get into Mordor at all. But if Master says I must go, or I will go, then he must try some way. But he must not go to the terrible city. Oh no, of course not. That is where Smeagol helps. Nice Smeagol. Though no one tells him what it's all about. Smeagol helps again. He finds it. He knows it.
What did you find? Asked Frodo. Gollum crouched down and his voice sank to a whisper again.
A little path leading up into the mountains. And then a stair, a narrow stair, oh yes, very long and narrow, and then more stairs, and then...
His voice sank even lower.
A tunnel. A dark tunnel, and at last a little cleft, and a path high above the main pass. It was that way that Smeagol got out of the darkness, but it was years ago. The path may have vanished now, but perhaps not, perhaps not.
So this is what I was talking about earlier. Somebody in the chat asked, has he been through this, or has he just heard of it? I said he's absolutely been through it. And here he's even saying, this is how I got out of Mordor, you know? Gollum got to the point of sneaking into nurseries, so he's crossed so many lines. Yeah. And that's important to note, too, that there's very few boundaries that this guy won't go beyond. And there is that part of him, though, and this is important to note, Chewie, there is a part of him that still feels an immense guilt over the very first murder that he committed. And this is why he justifies it so much, and he's sort of gaslit himself into believing that that's not the way it happened. And that it took some sort of hardcore therapy, you know, and a lot of threats from Gandalf to get him to tell the truth about what really happened then, you know. But what I'm getting at here is that Gollum has this part of him. He does have this very, very buried conscience that is gnawing at him. And and I think that, like, when he looks at Frodo, in a way, he's sort of seeing Deagle, in a way. Oh, I think we're having a technical issue here. Hold on a second. Are we live? Can we even stream? Like, what is going on here? Okay. It looks like we're good. For a minute, it was giving me the whole reconnecting nonsense. That's why I paused there. It seems that we're having a technical... We're having some issues today, is what I'm getting at. It looks like we're back. It looks like it's working. Can I just get people in the chat to confirm that you can hear and see me? It says I'm connected. For a moment, it was otherwise. I don't know why I'm having such a hard time today. Are we good? I can't tell whether the stream is live or not. It's giving me a lot of problems. Oh boy. What about on Twitch? Are we live on Twitch? I don't think we're live at all. I'm being lied to. It's telling me that we're live and we're not. All right, I'm going to try reconnecting. Okay, I think we're good now. I'm not sure quite what's happening today with the stream. We should be live now. See if I can refresh this. On YouTube, I'm seeing somebody else's stream. Okay, no, that's not correct. Are we live at all? It's telling me that I'm live. Yeah, we're definitely having a technical issue today. We're definitely having some kind of major technical problem today. I think the problem is that the way that YouTube does is that each time it generates a new stream, so that I have to go and find the new one. So I can't see the chat until I go. Here we are. Okay. All right. Third time the charm, hopefully. So weird. Yeah. Okay. All right. So you can hear and see me, guys, on YouTube, Twitch. Hello. This is just not working for me today. I don't know what's going on. I'm definitely having some major issues. Okay. Twitch has told me that we are back. YouTube, are we back? YouTube? Hello? This is just not working. Yeah. It's pretty delayed, but it is working. I'm not sure what the issue is right now. But obviously this is not working out very well. And yeah, I'm getting all kinds of errors here. Moogle or whoever, can one of my moderators get rid of that guy on the Twitch chat, please? All right, I'm not sure exactly how to proceed here. You know what? I'll do it. I'll get rid of this guy. This is goodbye. Okay. I'm not sure how to proceed. Whether we should try to continue or sort of pack it up for the day and say, well, we'll try again next time. But I don't want to have to go backwards and reread and relitigate everything. There's so much cool stuff to get to today, unfortunately. But what's really the issue for me is that every time we have to refresh like that and have to completely stop the stream and then restart it, every time that happens, I have to, the views go down because not everybody finds their way back. So we went from like 50 people to 20 people. Now we're at like 10. And that's not really very good. So I think what I'm going to try to do, because already this is a giant mess, and I'm going to do two things. The first thing is I'm going to try to see if there's some sort of issue with my internet. So I'm just going to do a quick speed test here. And after that, what I'm going to do is... No, my internet is fine. So this didn't happen last week. This didn't happen during the Council of Tolkien. We had a stable stream all the way through. But today, for whatever reason, I don't know what's going on. And it's definitely something... It's the Dirty Hobbitses? It must be. It's not... I can't say that it's a YouTube problem. I can't say that it's a Twitch problem because it's happening on both. So it has to be a me problem. So what we're going to do is... Hey there, Bright. Yeah, where's the crowd exactly? I had 50 people in here, and then my stream disconnected, and then my stream disconnected again, and now I only have 10 people. So that's where the crowd is. I'm having technical issues, and especially the way that YouTube works. Every time the stream disconnects and you reconnect, it's a completely different URL because the old one just turns into a video. So if you're sitting there and you're watching a stream and it goes off, and then the person reconnects, it doesn't just come back on. You have to go to their channel, and or hopefully you get the alert that says we're live. Yeah, we're having a bit of a problem. So here's what we're going to try to do, guys, because it's an hour and a half into the stream. I know it says 5 minutes, but it's an hour and a half into the stream. We've disconnected twice. Clearly there's something going on. My internet says it's fine, but clearly there's something going on. So we're going to try to just finish this chapter, and then we'll just stop for the day, because I already have to edit all these pieces together, which is not fun to do, and it's time consuming and everything. So this is what we'll do. I see that you're on YouTube, and yes, the stream is working right now, but like I said, it went down twice. So the way that YouTube works, because I'm broadcasting to YouTube and I'm broadcasting to Twitch. On Twitch, if your stream goes down and then comes right back up, somebody will see it go down and then they'll see it come back up. But on YouTube, if a stream goes down, it just becomes a video, and then that person has to navigate to your live tab and click on the new live, which is really dumb. But that's the way that YouTube works, unfortunately. So, well, let's try to finish this chapter, and then we'll call it a day. So we're only going to get through one chapter today, which is unfortunate, especially since, we don't get to meet Faramir. But I have to figure out what's going on. Maybe I just have to reset the modem or something. But yeah. And by the way, for those of you watching on YouTube, Ted from the Twitch side is saying hi to you right now, or you could probably see that on the screen actually. But let's try to finish this. So what I was saying before the technical problem started was that when Gollum looks at Frodo, in a way, he's sort of seeing Deagle. He's seeing this guy who he murdered. Now, it's not really literally, because Gollum was very dominant over Deagle. He was a bully. Deagle was this guy that he pushed around. But even though Deagle was treated poorly, he still hung around him. And I think he's sort of saying, well, I've tried to kill this guy, and he's still being nice to me. But now I've upset him. And he's freaking out at me, and he's scaring me, and I'm actually a little bit scared. The font size for us to see the Twitch feed is do you want me to make that bigger? I can make it bigger. It is pretty small. The problem is there's not a lot of room where I can make it. Maybe if I put it up here. Also, my green screen is everything's going wrong today, guys. All right, I don't want to put it over the book, because then it's kind of hard to read. Where do you think it works best? I want to make it a little bigger. Oh, there you go. Also, keep in mind that you could also make the screen bigger by going full screen. But I guess if you're watching on a phone or something, it's probably not great, right? All right, let's try to power through this and finish up with the black gate is closed. And I'll try to figure out on my end why I'm having such an issue with streaming today. Probably going to have to do a full restart of the whole thing, All right, let's continue here. Gollum crowd. Oh, I read that part already, right? I don't like the sound of it at all, said Sam. Sounds too easy at any rate in the telling. If that path is still there, it'll be guarded too. Wasn't it guarded, Gollum? As he said this, he caught or fancied he caught a green gleam in Gollum's eye. Gollum muttered, but did not reply. Oh, okay, Deborah, it's fine. Like I said, as soon as I finish the chapter, I think I got to get off of here and restart the modem and everything. Normally, don't have to do that, but clearly I'm having a problem today. Is it not guarded? Asked Frodo sternly. And did you escape out of the darkness, Smeagol? Were you not rather permitted to depart upon an errand? That at least is what Aragorn thought, who found you by the dead marshes some years ago.
It's a lie,
hissed Gollum, and an evil light came into his eyes at the naming of Aragorn.
He lied on me, yes he did. I did escape, all by my poor self. Indeed, I was told to seek for the precious, and I have searched and searched, of course I have. But not for the black one. The precious was ours. It was mine, I tell you. I did not escape. I did escape.
Frodo felt a strange certainty that in this matter Gollum was for once not too far from the truth as might be suspected, that he had somehow found a way out of Mordor, and at least believed that it was by his own cunning. For one thing, he noted that Gollum used I, and that he seemed to usually be a sign, on its rare appearances, that some remnants of old truth and sincerity were for the moment on top. But even if Gollum could be trusted on this point, Frodo did not forget the wiles of the enemy. The escape may have been allowed or arranged, and well known in the Dark Tower. And in any case, Gollum was plainly keeping a good deal back. I ask you again, he said, is not this secret way guarded? But the name of Aragorn had put Gollum in a sullen mood. He had all the injured air of a liar suspected, for once when he is told the truth or part of it, he did not answer. Is it not guarded? Frodo repeated.
Yes, perhaps. No safe places in this country,
said Gollum sulkily.
No safe places. But Master must try it, or go home. No other way.
They could not get him to say more. The name of the perilous place in the high pass he could not tell, or would not. Its name was Cirith Ungol, a name of dreadful rumour. Aragorn could perhaps have told them that name and its significance. Gandalf would have warned them. But they were alone, and Aragorn was far away, and Gandalf stood amid the ruin of Isengard, and strove with Saruman, delayed by treason. Yet even as he spoke his last words to Saruman, and the Palantir crashed in fire upon the steps of Orthanc, his thought was ever upon Frodo and Samwise. Over the long leagues his mind sought for them in hope and pity. So that's just kind of telling you where we are in the story right now, which is interesting because everything happens really quickly, even if it takes up a whole section of the book, right? And a few days have passed, and in that, the Battle of Helm's Deep happened. You know, all this stuff happened. The Ents went to Isengard. All this has happened. And right now, as the Voice of Saruman chapter is happening, this is happening. So, you know, book 4 and book 5 are, book 3 and book 4, I should say. Book 3 and book 4, they're happening simultaneously. But this part goes beyond that a little bit, because there's, you know, so much more that happens with Frodo and Sam and everybody. So, you know, it's sort of like saying that book 3 is sort of front loaded and book 4 is sort of back loaded in the way that content is divvied up. And I'm seeing the view count grow up higher. We're getting people back. People are finding the stream again. Like I said, I'm very sorry that we've had technical issues today, and I'm trying to power through that. Obviously, the lives are all just going to kind of be taken down after this, and I'm going to just make it into a video. And hopefully this doesn't happen again. But these sort of issues, if I have an issue tomorrow with Twitch, I'll know that there's something really wrong. And then I'll have to call the cable company, which is not fun. But let's continue here. Maybe Frodo felt it, not knowing it, as he had upon Amon Hen, even though he believed that Gandalf was gone forever into the shadow in Moria far away. He sat upon the ground for a long while, silent, his head bowed, striving to recall all that Gandalf had said to him. But for this choice he could recall no counsel. Indeed, Gandalf's guidance had been taken from them too soon while the Dark Land was still very far away. How they should enter it at the last Gandalf had not said. Perhaps he could not say. Into the stronghold of the enemy in the north, into Dol Guldur, he had once ventured. But into Mordor, to the Mountain of Fire, and to Barad-dûr, since the Dark Lord rose in power again, had he ever journeyed there? Frodo did not think so. And here he was, a little halfling from the Shire, a simple hobbit of the quiet countryside, expected to find a way where the great ones could not go, or dared not go. It was an evil fate. But he had taken it upon himself in his own sitting room in the far-off spring of another year, so remote now that it was like a chapter in a story of the world's youth, when the trees of silver and gold were still in bloom. This was an evil choice. Which way should he choose? And if both led to terror and death, what good lay in choice? Let's comment on this briefly. So, it's being compared here. I just want to read this part again. It was like a chapter in a story of the world's youth when the trees of silver and gold were still in bloom. We're going back to the years of the trees, the first part of the first age. The first age, it was a really, really long time period compared to the second age and the third age, right? And people don't notice that right away because when you look at the calendars, it looks like the second age lasted about 3,000 years, right? The third age, just about 3,000 years as well. The first age, the last year of the first age on the calendar is first age 530, I believe it is. It's in the 500s. I believe it's around there, 530. So you're like, oh, well, so the first age was actually really short. Like, no. It's just that calendar started with the first sunrise. Before that was still the first age. The first age started with the creation of the two trees. Now, before that, there was time periods before that. It's called the days before days, and that's where the spring of Arda was and everything. But when the trees were created, that's when the first age started. And each of those year of the trees was like 8.5 years of the sun. So when you do the math and you add it all up, the first stage was really long. And the reason I'm getting into all this is saying that this was a long time ago, and it was a long time period where those trees were there. Because it was like 1,100 and somewhat years of the trees. And then you multiply that by 8.5, roughly 8.5. It's like 8.53 something or other. I have the formula somewhere else. Actually, I did use that formula very recently when I talked about the days before days in the spring of Arda and how long that was, But anyway, this is the first time that we're seeing this. Like I said, who is actually narrating the book, right? In universe, because it's Frodo writes the book later. He calls it The Downfall of the Lord of the Rings and the Return of the King. And, but it's not just attributed to Frodo. It's not like it says by Frodo Baggins. It says the accounts of 4 hobbits, and then added to that accounts of the wise and their friends. So, they're saying that basically there were parts of it that Merry and Pippin and Sam also wrote, and that a lot of what they didn't know because they didn't experience it firsthand was told to them by Gandalf, by Elrond, by Treebeard, by Aragorn, by Gimli almost certainly. So basically, there's a lot of different narrative voices. But this is one of those things where you have to sort of guess, right? And as the Lord of the Rings follows Frodo and Sam, the narrative voice starts to become less and less Frodo and more Sam. By the time they're actually within the confines of Mordor, the Land of Shadows, it's 100% Sam, because Frodo was out of his mind. He was just striving himself forward through sheer willpower. And he wasn't really thinking about anything. He wasn't thinking about the scenery or anything like that. That was all Sam. At this point, they're not quite in Mordor. They're outside the borders of Mordor. They're very close to it. They are sort of going back and forth, I think, in the writing. This is a Sam passage, and I'll tell you how I know it's a Sam passage, because it brings up the Silmarillion. And Sam is going to bring up the Silmarillion more than a few times, especially when we start talking about the Phial of Light that Galadriel gave to Frodo, and how that is sort of like a pseudo Silmaril, a a Silmaril from AliExpress, you know? It's not quite name brand, but it still lights up, you know? It's not quite as sturdy. It might fall apart on you if you were to drop it, but it still does basically the same thing. And Sam makes the observation that they are in the same story as Beren and Luthien. So, you know, just to give you guys a visual here, you know, same story, right? The two towers, Beren and Luthien, not meaning that one copies the other or even that one mirrors the other, but that they're part of the same narrative. And Sam realizing this is foreshadowed here, where he's saying Frodo making the choice to embark on this journey is like a story out of the Silmarillion. All right, let's continue. The day drew on. A deep silence fell upon the little grey hollow where they lay, so near to the borders of the land of fear. A silence that could be felt as if there were a thick veil that cut them off from the world about them. Above them was a dome of pale sky barred with fleeting smoke, but it seemed high and far away, as if through great drops of air heavy with brooding thought. Not even an eagle poised against the sun could have marked the hobbits sitting there under the weight of doom, silent, not moving, shrouded in their thin grey cloaks. For a moment he might have paused to consider Gollum, a tiny figure sprawling on the ground. There perhaps lay the famished skeleton of some child of men, its ragged garments still clinging to it, its long arms and legs almost bone-wide and bone-thin, no flesh worth a peck. Frodo's head was bowed over his knees, but Sam leaned back with hands behind his head, staring out of his hood at the empty sky. At least for a long while it was empty. Then presently Sam thought he saw a dark bird-like figure wheel into the circle of his sight, and hover, and then wheel away again. Two more followed, and then a fourth. They were very small to look at, yet he knew somehow that they were huge, with a vast stretch of pinion, flying at great height. He covered his eyes and bent forward, cowering. The same warning fear was on him as he had felt in the presence of the Black Riders, the helpless horror that had come with the cry in the wind and the shadow on the moon. Though now it was not so crushing or compelling, the menace was more remote, but menace it was. Frodo felt it too. His thought was broken. He stirred and shivered, but he did not look up. Gollum huddled himself together like a cornered spider. The winged shapes wheeled and swooped swiftly down, speeding back to Mordor. Just to comment on something that was mentioned here, we get like the closest thing that we'll ever really get to kind of a physical description of Gollum. He's wearing clothes. It's something that so many people miss. Where it's very explicitly mentioned that Gollum is wearing clothes. And I'm talking about long before the Peter Jackson movies happened. It was just a common way of depicting Gollum as being very nearly naked with just some sort of little loincloth around his middle and nothing else, right? Bare-chested, bare-limbed. And that's the way that so many people drew Gollum. It's the way that he appeared in the Rankin Bass Hobbit. That's the way that he appeared in the Ralph Bakshi, The Lord of the Rings. And it's the way he appeared in all those Tolkien calendars that my mom had back in the day, and probably sitting in the basement somewhere. I don't know where they would be. They're somewhere. They exist, I'm sure. I don't think she ever got rid of them. But what I'm saying is there's this little passage mentioning that, yes, he has clothes. It's not the only passage. It's the only one in The Lord of the Rings. In The Hobbit, it mentioned he had pockets. So if he has pockets, he certainly has clothes. It's not like he's a kangaroo or anything. You know. But yeah, that's just one of those things that I just point to. Yes, he's wearing clothes. And it's also saying that he's pale. What skin color, essentially, Gollum has is hotly debated, because there's so many descriptions of him being black. But what we're really meant to take from that is that his clothes are black and his hair is black, but everything else is pale. So he hasn't seen the sun in a really long time, and even after coming out of the mountains for sitting under that the Misty Mountains for 5 centuries, he still avoided the sun like the plague. He didn't like it. He's like the orcs are in that way. He's become sort of like an orc in that way. Let's continue here. Sam took a deep breath. "The riders are about again up in the air," he said with a hoarse whisper. "I saw them. Do you think they could see us? They were very high up, and if they are black riders, same as before, then they can't see much by daylight, can they?" "No, perhaps not," said Frodo, "but their steeds could see, and these winged creatures that they ride on now, they could probably see more than any other creature. They are like great carrion birds. They are looking for something. The enemy is on the watch, I fear." The feeling of dread passed, but the enfolding silence was broken. For some time they had been cut off from the world as if in an invisible island. Now they were laid bare again. Peril had returned, but still Frodo did not speak to Gollum or make his choice. His eyes were closed as if he were dreaming, or looking inward into his heart and memory. At last he stirred and stood up, and it seemed that he was about to speak and decide. "But hark," he said, "what is that?" A new fear was upon them. They heard singing and hoarse shouting. At first it seemed a long way off, but it drew nearer. It was coming toward them. It leaped into all their minds that the black wings had spied them and sent armed soldiers to seize them. No speed seemed too great for these terrible servants of Sauron. They crouched, listening. The voices and the clink of weapons and harness was very close. Frodo and Sam loosened their small swords in their sheaths. Flight was impossible. Gollum rose slowly and crawled, insect-like, to the lip of the hollow. Very cautiously he raised himself inch by inch until he could peer over it into 2 broken points of stone. He remained there without moving for some time, making no sound. Presently the voices began to recede again, and they slowly faded away. Far off a horn blew in the ramparts of the Morannon. Then quietly Gollum drew back and slipped under down into the hollow. Morannon, by the way, it doesn't actually translate it there, but it just means Black Gate. You'd actually have to look at the map and see that that's the Black Gate, but that's what Morannon means.
"More men going to Mordor,"
he said in a low voice.
"Dark faces. We have not seen men like these before, Smeagol is not. They are fierce. They have black eyes and long black hair, and gold rings in their ears, yes, and lots of beautiful gold. And some have red paint on their cheeks and red cloaks, and their flags are red, and the tips of their spears, and they have round shields, yellow and black with big spikes. Not nice. Very cruel, wicked men they look, almost as bad as orcs, and much bigger. Smeagol thinks they have come out of the south, beyond the great river's end. They came up that road. They have passed on to the Black Gate, but more may follow. Anyways, always more people coming to Mordor. One day the peoples will be inside."
You painted your Gollum figure for whatever that is with black skin based on what you read on the Guide to Middle-earth. Yeah, you see that there's a lot of misinterpretations. There's a lot of descriptions of Gollum being black, but then we have this very clear description of him being very, very pale. So, like I said, it's the black clothes and the black hair that makes him. The descriptions go that way, and that's just sort of like the way that Tolkien wrote. And it used to be a very common way to describe people. Like the Black Riders are described many, many times. The Nazgul are described in Book 1 as being Middle-earth strategy battle game. Okay. I'm like, Emmy was probably Middle-earth, but then the rest I was like, I wasn't sure. It's described a lot as black men. Now, if you say black men today, you think people with dark skin, right? But they don't even have skin. they're invisible, right? And when Frodo puts on the ring and he's able to see what they look like as ghosts, they're pale, But they're consoled black men because they have the shape of men, and people think they are men because they're cloaked. They're wearing all black. You know what I mean? So when Gollum is referred to as black, it's because he's wearing black. It's sort of like when, people used to say tall, dark, and handsome. They don't mean dark-skinned. They mean dark hair, and usually dark clothes, like a suit, that kind of thing. It's just like, it's very archaic way of speaking. You have to remember that this was published in the 1950s, but yeah, and hey, okay, so you painted Gollum black. That's not actually, it's really interesting. Let me ask you, did you see the Fellowship of the Ring film when you first saw that? Was that in a movie theater, the first run, or was it home video or streaming or a revival run? And I'm gonna continue while you answer that, and I'll circle back to it because there's a reason I'm asking that, and it's relevant to what we're talking about. All right, let's see. Were they any oliphants? Asked Sam, forgetting his fear in his eagerness for news of strange places.
No oliphants. What are oliphants?
Asked Gollum. It was in the theater, but was it the initial run? Or was it later on? Sam stood up, putting his hands behind his back as he always did when speaking poetry, and began. Gray as a mouse, big as a house, nose like a snake, I make the earth shake. As I tramp through the grass, trees crack as I pass. With horns in my mouth, I walk in the south. Flapping big ears beyond count of years, I stump round and round, never lie on the ground, not even to die. Oliphant am I, biggest of all, huge, old, and tall. If ever you'd meet me, you wouldn't forget me. If you never do, you won't think I'm true, but old Oliphant am I, and I never lie. Deb, you saw the films the night that they were released. That's cool. The initial run. Okay, so I also saw them in the initial run. And you may have seen The Fellowship of the Ring many, many times since then. You probably own it. You probably have a DVD or a Blu-ray. You've probably watched it on HBO Max or Netflix or just whenever it's on TV. Because, why wouldn't you, right? They changed it. They changed what Gollum looked like. Gollum's only in it for like a second. But in the original theatrical release of The Fellowship of the Ring, Gollum was jet black. And then they changed it because the Two Towers came out and he had the design that we're familiar with. So that when they released The Fellowship of the Ring on its initial DVD, I think there might have even been a VHS copy. I'm not sure whether or not there was. VHS was sort of going out the window at that point. It was changed where he had that pale, sickly look that he were familiar with. And I really think it's because Peter Jackson thought that Gollum had black skin. And then somebody must have pointed out, wait, no, he doesn't. It says right there, pale. And it's like, well, it's a good thing he was only on screen for a moment, right? So yes, they changed the way that Gollum looks. And I remember it. I remember seeing it, and I thought he kind of looked like an evil E.T. or something, the way that they made him look. But it was very brief. Like you just sort of saw his hands and his eyes when Gandalf was speaking about him. But yeah, so there you have it. So yeah. You don't remember him being? I remember it. I remember it very vividly, but there's no way to actually see that version. I don't know. It might exist on YouTube or maybe in the special features or something. They might show the old version of Gollum. Hey, you know what? Let me see if I could find a picture. It was in shadow, but if you look at him, it's very, very different. Let's see if I can find a picture of it. Found it. I'm going to put this on the screen. Wait, am I able to do that here, or do I have to? Oh, no, I can do it. There you go. So this was what it looked like in the original movie theater, and you can definitely see a big, big difference in the way that he's depicted here and the way that he was depicted in the re-releases, whether they were on home video or streaming, or even the revivals in theaters, and the way that he looked in the Two Towers. Even the eyes are different. You know, the eyes are very different, actually. So he got like a drastic redesign there. But you can see, yes, he's in shadows, but there is some light right around here hitting him. And you can see a little bit on his fingers. And you could see, yeah, he's jet black. I was like, okay, you don't remember it? That's cool. I think if I work at it, I can find a picture. And thankfully I was able to. Oh, Ted remembers it. Okay, that's cool. I'm glad somebody else other than me remembers it, but now I was able to actually show you guys that, yeah, they changed the way that Gollum looked, you know? Yes, and that's the thing. Gihan's absolutely right. It's not like they filmed The Fellowship of the Ring and then The Two Towers and The Return of the King. As a matter of fact, the first things that they filmed were all the Shire scenes, which included the very end of The Return of the King. So they filmed by location, you know? So, yeah, they were still the special effects. They had plenty of time to work on it. You know, there were so many changes. Like I still think of like, oh my God, can you imagine the world, the alternate universe where Stuart Townsend played Aragorn? Have you guys ever seen the picture of Stuart Townsend in costume as Aragorn? There's only one picture existing of it. You know what? I'm going to bring that up too, because it's not like he lost the role, you know, that he wasn't chosen. He was chosen. He was on set and everything, and he got fired for a very good reason, by the way. Because he was being basically a huge jerk to everybody on set. I have a picture. This is the Aragorn we could have gotten, which just no, you know, right? Just no. Absolutely no. It's terrible. Not only does he not look anything like what you imagine the character to look like, but if you're thinking, who is he? Who's Stuart Townsend? He's a terrible actor. That's who he is. He is awful. His most famous role was in Van Helsing, which was not a good movie. And he was mostly known for like, soap operas and things like that, right? That's actually, Gihan. Okay, it goes deeper than that. It goes deeper than that. He didn't remove tomatoes from a line in The Hobbit because they wouldn't have existed in Middle-earth. Because as you pointed out, he has tobacco, which are New World crops, and he has potatoes are New World crops, right? He removed tomato because he realized that they weren't in season at that point in time. You liked his Lestat? Did you see the TV show version of Interview with the Vampire? They are going to be doing The Queen of the Damned, which I'm glad for because I didn't like the movie version. Yeah, Deb knows her stuff. So at that point, tomatoes were not in season, and that's also why he changed that line specifically from tomato to pickle. Because pickles are something that it doesn't matter, you know, when cucumbers are in season, because once you pickle them, they're preserved and you can have them any time of the year. So of course, Bilbo would have lots of pickles, right? So that's why. Yeah, I you hated it. I liked the TV show version. I didn't like the Queen of the Damned film. I liked the Interview with the Vampire film, but I did not like the Queen of the Damned. I thought that they ruined it. Hopefully they do a good TV show version of it. But I'll tell you that the guy who played Lestat in the TV show version, when I saw him, I thought, that's Glorfindel. That's the guy who should play Glorfindel in The Lord of the Rings. I just look at him and I'm like, he's an elf. Look at him. But Stuart Townsend, just not a great actor, you know. And can you imagine if he was Aragorn? If Peter Jackson managed to swallow his thoughts and say, all right, we'll work with this guy, you know. Because this is what happened. I'll tell you guys the story. They hired Stuart. he didn't show up right away. Everybody got there early. They were learning how to use swords. They were learning how to ride horses. They were practicing and rehearsing lines, you know. He was not interested. He came late. He wasn't interested in that. He got Ian McKellen very upset at one point, and they were like one day away from when they were going to film. And Peter Jackson sort of looked at his assistant director and said, "I don't think I can work with Stewart." And that was it. He was out. Tom Cruise was really good as Lestat. And I say that as somebody who doesn't generally like Tom Cruise, but I will grudgingly admit the roles that he's good in, and that was one of them. And what's funny is the author, Anne Rice, she didn't even see the movie. She said that she was so offended by the thought of Tom Cruise playing Lestat that she refused to see it. And she said, it has to be terrible. There's no way it's good if Tom Cruise is playing Lestat. And it was years and years later when it was, it was on VHS, and she finally watched it because her fans kept telling her, it's good, it's good, it's good. And then she was like, okay, it's good, But she was a very cranky person who, had a lot of meltdowns about things, and she's entitled to do that as a writer, but she was a character, Anne Rice, is all I could say, There's an author that's on Quora that reminds me of her, which is, her name is Mercedes Lackey. And Mercedes Lackey, if you know her books, good for you, because they're not exactly very well known, but she does write fantasy novels. And she's on Quora, and I actually ran across her like a few times. But I tell you, the first time I ran across her, there was a friend of mine who's a moderator on my Twitch channel who asked a question about her, and Mercedes Lackey had like a big Anne Rice tantrum about it. And they were both wrong, by the way. Like, Mercedes Lackey was way more wrong, but there was fault on both sides. And I spoke to both of them, and I actually got them to sort of make up and realize that no one's attacking anyone, Well, Mercedes Lackey was on the attack because she thought she was being attacked. And it was just a question based on some quotes that she said from like the 90s that are no longer relevant anymore. But it was like, my friend was very upset because it's like, oh my God, my favorite author yelled at me on Quora and called me all sorts of names and blocked me. And I'm just devastated by this. And I said, do you want me to talk to her? And she says, if you can. So I went and I said, I left a comment and I said, hey, maybe you'll listen to me. Because people know who I am on Quora, and you'll know that I'm not just coming after you, and I didn't make this account, to attack you or anything. Here's what really happened. I told the story. Apologies were made, both sides of it, But anyway, yeah, she had a bit. But I said, oh, she's kind of like Anne Rice, huh? Kind of like Anne Rice, just very cranky. But yes, no. For Lestat, if I was to say between the three actors that played him, Tom Cruise did the best. But visually, I think the guy that played him, I wish I remember his name. I said it last week when we were talking about a theoretical cast of The Lord of the Rings. I thought that this guy who played him on the AMC show looked like him the most. And I thought, wow, this guy looks like he should be playing one of Tolkien's elves, though, like if they, made The Lord of the Rings again, he could be Legolas but more likely, I think Glorfindel, because he has an aura of power to him, or at least he did in Interview with the Vampire. Let's continue onwards, guys. It seems that whatever issues we were having were temporary, so that's a good thing. That, said Sam, when he had finished reciting. That's a rhyme we have in the Shire. Nonsense, maybe, but maybe not. But we have our tales, too, and news out of the south, In the old days, hobbits used to go on their travels now and again. Not that many ever came back, and not that they all said what they all said was believed. News from Bree, and not as sure as Shire talk, as the sayings go. But I've heard tales of the big folk down way in the Sunlands. Swertings we called them in our tales, and they ride on elephants, 'tis said, when they fight. They put houses and towers on the elephants' backs and all, and the elephants throw rocks and trees at one another. So when you say men out of the south, all in red and gold, I said, were there any elephants? For if there was, I was going to take a look, risk or no. But now I don't suppose I'll ever see an oliphant. Maybe there ain't no such a beast, he sighed.
No elephants, said Gollum again. Smeagol has not heard of them. He does not want to see them. He does not want them to be. Smeagol wants to go away from here and hide somewhere safer. Smeagol wants Master to go. Nice, Master. Won't he come with Smeagol?
Frodo stood up. He had laughed in the midst of all his cares when Sam trotted out the old fireside rum of Oliphant, and the laugh had released him from hesitation. I wish we had 1,000 Oliphants with Gandalf and a white one at their head, he said. Then we'd break away into this evil land, perhaps, but we've not. Just our own tired legs, that's all. Well, Smeagol, the third turn may be the best. I will come with you.
Good, Master, nice, Master,
cried Gollum in delight, patting Frodo's knees.
Good, Master. The rest now. Nice habits under the shadow of the stones. Close under the stones. Rest and lie quiet till the yellow face goes away. Then we can go quickly, soft and quick, as shadows must be.
That's the end of the chapter. Boy, I kind of really want to continue. But unfortunately, I don't think it's... What do you guys think? The next chapter, chapter 4, of Herbs and Stewed Rabbit. Well, let's see. It starts on page 256. It ends on page 270. So it's 14 pages. I think we could... whatever technical issues we were having before seem to have passed. So that's the good news, right? You wonder if there's animals like Minos in Middle-earth? Are you referring to oxen? Because there are. Oh, rhinos is what you said. I'm sorry, my glasses are dirty. Rhinos, probably down in Harad, which is the same place the Mumakil are from. Mumakil are the actual names of what Sam refers to as an oliphant. They're called Mumak is a singular form. Mumakil is the plural, and they're like elephants, but they're way bigger. I mean, well, Mogul, you saw the movie, but yeah, they're rhinoceros. They probably exist. I don't see any reason why they wouldn't. As a matter, I mean, rhinos are sort of very old creatures because they they were a lot of the basis of a unicorn myth, actually, because people would see a rhinoceros and then they would describe this creature with 4 legs and a horn, and that's it. You didn't see that. That doesn't exist, Yeah. No, I thought I thought it. My glasses were dirty. What about monkeys and apes? Oh, that's really interesting. Probably in the Far East. But certainly not in this area of Middle-earth, right? Is you have to remember this area of Middle-earth is pretty much like Europe, So with monkeys and apes, you would think Africa, Asia. Same thing, elephants, And the reason that we're seeing or about to see elephants in this part of the world, or Mumak, is because they're being brought to war. You could bring an elephant to war. You can't really bring a rhinoceros to war. You can't really bring monkeys or apes to war unless you're, it's like my favorite movie, The Planet of the Apes, right? But you also asked something that I don't understand, Moogle. You said, where did you ask that? I saw something strange. You said, who's the cast you wouldn't want to see? I don't know are you talking about, like the Lord of the Rings or something else? Like, I don't remember. Were you here last week when we had that whole discussion? I think we should continue. I was going to do 2 chapters anyway. And yes, we had some severe technical issues, but they seem to have subsided. And the view count is back up to nearly 30, so I don't really just want to end right now. It's still not even... It's later than I'd like it to be for doing another chapter. You were? Okay. Oh, what's the casting I would... Well, okay. Well, we talked about it a little bit last week. Like, the one thing that I would not want to see even though I've said in the past that this was probably be like the wise choice, I don't agree anymore. I don't want to see Jack Black play Tom Bombadil. I'm tired of Jack Black and how he seems to be in like every movie. So it's just, I've reached Jack Black fatigue. We're a long ways away from the School of Rock, or King Kong. Interestingly, a Peter Jackson film. But yeah. Actually, it's closer to 30 because remember I'm on multiple platforms. But yeah, we had nearly 60 at one point. I looked at the thing before it went down the first time and it said 58. I didn't want to acknowledge it, but there you go. Yeah, I mean, Jack Black is, like I said, he's just oversaturated, and like I know, like everybody's like, oh, he should play Bombadil, and I'm like, I get it, he can sing, he kind of looks like Tom Bombadil anyway. I could see it, but I'm just tired of him. A lot of people thought if they did Bombadil on the big screen and they weren't just saying Rory Kinnear to play him again, that it would be Brian Blessed. Which I can understand that. But who did I pick? Let me see. I had Patton Oswalt, and I stand by that. I had Patton Oswalt for Bombadil. I'm going to make a video version of that. It's not going to be me and Matt and Sid talking and like what I said. I'm just going to make like a video out of our casting. I still need Matt and Sid to actually email me their notes, but I don't think they're going to. They say, oh yeah, I'll email you, and then it never happens, And then I have to like chase them down, and I don't feel like doing that. So I think what I'm going to do is just, watch the recording and write a script for myself and make like a separate video, That way it's not just like a separate version of the same thing, but something new, All right, but let's continue here. Let's do chapter 4 of Herbs and Stewed Rabbit. And yes, this is the chapter that gives us potatoes. For the few hours of daylight that were left, they rested, shifting into the shade as the sun moved, until at last the shadow of the western rim of the dell grew long, and darkness filled all the hollow. Then they ate a little and drank sparingly. Gollum ate nothing, but he accepted water gladly.
Soon get more now, he said, licking his lips. Good water runs down in streams to the great river. Nice water in the lands that we're going to. Smeagol will get food there, perhaps. He's very hungry. Yes, Gollum.
He set his 2 large flat hands on his shrunken belly, and a pale green light came into his eyes. The dusk was deep when at length they set out, creeping over the westward rim of the dell, and fading like ghosts into the broken country on the borders of the road. The moon was now 3 nights from the full, but he did not climb over the mountains until nearly midnight, and the early night was very dark. A single red light burned high up in the towers of the Teeth, but otherwise no sign could be heard or seen of the sleepless watch on the Moranon. For many miles the red eye seemed to stare at them as they fled, stumbling through a barren, stony country. They did not dare to take the road, but they kept it on their left, following its line as well they could at little distance. At last, when night was growing old and they were already weary, for they had taken only one short rest, the eye dwindled to a small fiery point and then vanished. They had turned the dark northern shoulder of the lower mountains and were heading southwards. With hearts strangely lightened, they now rested again, but not for long. They were not going quick enough for Gollum. By his reckoning, it was nearly 30 leagues from the Moranon to the crossroads above Osgiliath, and he hoped to cover that distance in 4 journeys. So soon they struggled on once more until the dawn began to spread slowly in the wide grey solitude. They had then walked almost 8 leagues, and the hobbits could not have gone any further even if they had dared. The growing light revealed to them a land already less barren and ruinous. The mountains still loomed up ominously on their left, but near at hand they could see the southward road, now bearing away from the black roots of the hill and slanting westward. Beyond it were slopes covered with sombre trees like dark clouds, but all about them lay a tumbled heathland, grown with ling and broom and cornel and other shrubs that they did not know. Here and there they saw knots of tall pine trees. The hearts of the hobbits rose again in little in spite of weariness. The air was fresh and fragrant, and it reminded them of the uplands of the North Farthing far away. It seemed good to be reprieved, to walk in a land that had only been for a few years under the dominion of the Dark Lord, and was not yet fallen wholly into decay. But they did not forget their danger, nor the black gate that was still all too near, hidden though it was behind the gloomy heights. They looked about for a hiding place where they could shelter from the evil eyes while the light lasted. The day passed uneasily. They lay deep in the heather and counted out the slow hours in which there seemed little change, for they were still under the shadows of the Etheldúath, and the sun was veiled. Frodo slept at times, deeply and peacefully, either trusting Gollum or too tired to trouble about him. But Sam found it difficult to do more than doze, even when Gollum was plainly fast asleep, whiffling and twitching in his secret dreams. Hunger, perhaps, more than mistrust, kept him wakeful. He had begun to long for a good homely meal, something hot out of the pot. As soon as the land faded into a formless grey under the coming night, they started out again. In a little while Gollum led them down to the southward road, and after that they went on more quickly, though the danger was greater. Their ears were strained for the sound of hoof or foot on the road ahead, or following from them from behind, but the night passed, and they heard no sound of walker or rider. One moment here, I just really need to drink some water. Okay, sorry. All right, sorry about that. I just really needed water there. The road had been made in a long-lost time, and for perhaps 30 miles below the Moranon it had been newly repaired. But as it went south, the wild encroached upon it. The handiwork of men of old could still be seen in its straight, sure flight and level course. Now and again it cut its way through hillside slopes, or leaped over a stream upon a wide, shapely arch of enduring masonry. But at last all signs of stonework faded, save for a broken pillar here and there, peering out of bushes on the side, or old paving stones still lurking amid weeds and moss. Heather and trees and brackens scrambled down and overhung the banks, or sprawled out over the surface. It dwindled at last to a country cart road little used. But it did not wind, it held on its own sure course, and guided them by the swiftest way. So they passed into the northern marches of that land that men once called Ithilien, a fair country of climbing woods and swift-falling streams. The night became fine under the star and round moon, and it seemed to the hobbits that the fragrance of the air grew as they went forward. And from the blowing and muttering of Gollum it seemed that he noticed it too and did not relish it. At first the signs of day they halted again. They had come to the end of a long cutting, deep and sheer-sided in the middle, by which road clove its way through a stony ridge. Now they climbed up the westward bank and looked abroad. Day was opening in the sky, and they saw that the mountains were now much further off, receding eastward in a long curve that was lost in the distance. Before them, as they turned west, gentle slopes ran down into dim hazes far below. All about them were small woods of resinous trees, fir and cedar and cypress, and all kinds unknown in the Shire, with wide glades among them, and everywhere there was a wealth of sweet-smelling herbs and shrubs. The long journey from Rivendell had brought them far south of their own land, but not until now in this more sheltered region had the hobbits felt the change of clime. Here spring was already busy about them. Fronds pierced moss and mould. Larches were green-fingered. Small flowers were opening in the turfs. Birds were singing. Ithilien, the garden of Gondor, now desolate, kept still a dishevelled dryad loveliness. South and west it looked toward the warm lower vales of Anduin, shielded from the east by the Etheldúath, and yet not under the mountain shadow, protected from the north by the Emyn Muil, open to the southern airs and the moist winds from the sea far away. Many great trees grew there, planted long ago, falling into unattended age amid a riot of careless descendants, and groves and thickets there were of tamarisk and pungent terebinth, of olive and of bay. And there were junipers and myrtles and thymes that grew in bushes, or with their woody creeping stems mantled in deep tapestries in the hidden stones, sages of many kinds putting forth blue flowers or red or pale green, and marjorams and new sprouting parsleys, and many herbs of form and sense beyond the garden lore of Sam. The grots and rocky walls were already starred with saxifrages and stone crops. Primaroles and anemones were awake in the vibrant ranks, and asphodel and many lily flowers nodded their half-opened heads in the grass, deep green grass beside the pools where falling streams halted in cool hollows on their journey down to Anduin. So that whole description of Ithilien, I just want to comment not so much on the lore here, but in the writing. And the reason I want to comment that is because it's Tolkien at his most poetic, and when he's speaking about scenery and flowers and trees and shrubs and herbs, and you get a little bit of him lapsing into the sort of Middle English poetry that he's so familiar with and grew up studying. Just to point out the alliteration, especially that you see, such as let's see, or was it half-opened heads is a little bit of that there, half-open and heads. Saxifrages and stone crops. You see the double alliteration. Often in Middle English, you would get, sometimes even, especially in poetry, you would get triple alliteration. Now, this isn't poetry, it is prose, but it's sort of lapsing into almost a prose poem, something of the likes of T.S. Eliot. There was another one. There was saxifrages and stone crops. I mentioned that one. There was another one, though. Half-opened heads is the second one I mentioned, but I felt like there was another one. It doesn't matter. But I'm saying that you're starting to see that a little bit of the sort of T.S. Eliot style prose poetry. The travelers turned their backs on the road and went downhill. As they walked, brushing their way through brush and herb, sweet odors rose about them. Gollum coughed and retched, but the hobbits breathed deep, and suddenly Sam laughed for heart's ease, not for jest. They followed a stream that went quickly down before them. Presently it brought them to a small clear lake in a shadow dell. It lay in the broken ruins of an ancient stone basin, the carven rim of which was almost wholly covered with mosses and rose brambles. Iris swords stood in ranks upon it, and water lily leaves floated in its dark, gently rippling surface, but it was deep and fresh and spilled ever softly out on a stony lip at the far end. More of that double alliteration that we're seeing with softly out over a stony lip. Water lily leaves. You're just seeing that crop up, especially towards the end of paragraphs. Here they washed themselves and drank their fill at the infalling freshet. Then they sought for a resting place and a hiding place, for this land, fair seeming still, was none the less now territory of the enemy. They had not come very far from the road, and yet even in so short a space they had seen scars of the old wars, and the newer wounds made by the orcs and other foul servants of the Dark Lord, a pit of uncovered filth and refuse, trees hewn down wantonly and left to die, with evil runes of the fell sign of the eye cut out in rude strokes on their bark. Oh, Alice is here. You got something that may be a game changer for future cooking. Is it the tarragon egg salad? Did that happen? Unfortunately, I've been having a terrible time here with the technical issues today, although it seems to have calmed down a bit. But I do want to hear about your culinary adventures here, especially if there's some big game changer. Sam scrambling below the outfall of the lake, smelling and touching the unfamiliar plants and trees, forgetful for the moment of Mordor, was reminded suddenly of their ever-present peril. He stumbled on a ring still scorched by fire, and in the midst of it he found a pile of charred and broken bones and skulls. The swift growth of the wild, with briar and eglantine and trailing clematis, was already drawing a veil over this place of dreadful feast and slaughter. But it was not ancient. He hurried back to his companions, but he said nothing. The bones were best left in peace and not pawed and rooted by Gollum. "Let's find a place to lie up in," he said. "Not lower down. Higher up for me." Dried crushed jalapenos. That's chipotle, isn't it? Isn't that what Chipotle is? So I believe that the way it works with peppers is that when they're dried, they get a completely different name. And I believe a Chipotle is a dried jalapeno. I could be wrong with it being exactly that, but I know that it exists. And it's like a completely sort of different flavor. But anything to do with peppers, I'm into it. I'm into it big time. But did you make the egg salad? I'm curious to know that. Oh, those are red jalapenos. You're talking about drying out green jalapenos. I wonder if that's been done. If it hasn't been done, then my question really would be, why not? Why hasn't it been done? Either it's something that just isn't that good, or there's a deep secret here that you're going to uncover, right? It is jarred and salt. Oh, so you're saying it's something that you've picked up and is it really good? Oh, interesting. All right, I might have to look into that then. A little way back above the lake, they found a deep brown bed of last year's fern. Beyond it was a thicket of dark-leaved bay trees, climbing up in a steep bank that was crowned with old cedars. Here they decided to rest and pass the day, which already promised to be bright and warm. A good day for strolling on their way along the groves and glades of Ithilien. But though orcs may shun the sunlight, there were too many places here where they could lie hid and watch, and other evil eyes were abroad. Sauron had many servants. Gollum, in any case, would not move under the yellow face. Soon it would look over the dark ridges of the Ethel-Duath, and he would faint and cower in the light and heat. You didn't do the... Yeah, okay. Oh, I'm sorry to hear you're not feeling well. Well, when you do it, I'm very curious, especially since I picked that mustard. Well, you picked that mustard out. I picked the other two out. I'm very curious to know how good those mustards are, because if they're really good, I might order some for myself. Sam had been giving earnest thought to food as they marched. Now that the despair of the impassable gate was behind him, he did not feel so inclined as his master to take no thought for their livelihood beyond the end of their errand. And anyway, it seemed wiser to him to save the waybread of the elves for worse times ahead. 6 days or more had passed since he reckoned they had only a bare supply for 3 weeks. If we reach the fire in that time, we'll be lucky at this rate, he thought. And we might be wanting to get back. We might. Besides, at the end of a long night march, and after a bathing and drinking, he felt even more hungry than usual. A supper or a breakfast by the fire in the old kitchen at Bagshot Row was what he really wanted. An idea struck him, and he turned to Gollum. Gollum had just begun to sneak off on his own, and he was crawling away on all fours through the fern. "Hi, Gollum," said Sam. "Where are you going, hunting? Well, see here, old noser, you don't like our food, and I'd not be sorry for a change myself. You new martyrs always ready to help. Could you find anything fit for a hungry hobbit?"
"Yes, perhaps yes," said Gollum. "Smeagol always helps if they asks nicely."
"Right," said Sam, "I does ask. And if that isn't nice enough, I begs." Gollum disappeared. He was away some time, and Frodo, after a few mouthfuls of lembas, settled deep into the brown fern and went to sleep. Sam looked at him. The early daylight was only creeping down the shadows under the trees, but he saw his master's face very clearly, and his hands, too, lying at rest on the ground beside him. He was reminded suddenly of Frodo as he had lain asleep in the house of Elrond after his deadly wound. Then, as he had kept watch, Sam noticed that at times a light seemed to be shining faintly within, but now the light was even clearer and stronger. Frodo's face was peaceful. The marks of fear and care had left it, but it looked old. Old and beautiful, as if the chiseling of the shaping years was now revealed in many fine lines that had before been hidden, though the identity of the face was not changed. Not that Sam Gamgee put it that way himself. He shook his head as if finding words useless and murmured, "I love him. He's like that, and sometimes it shines through somehow, but I love him whether or no." Gollum returned quietly and peered over Sam's shoulder. Looking at Frodo, he shut his eyes and crawled away without a sound. "Oh, hey, Anons, how's it going?" Homemade chili mac? Mixing in that mustard? Yeah, that would be good, I think, actually. Oh, you're talking the jalapeno. You're going to try it on pizza? That's interesting. You know what I would personally try it on? I would do the mac, yeah. But, I mean, Right now, if you're having some gastrointestinal distress, you might want to avoid cheese for a little while. Although it's a tempting mistress, isn't it? Gollum returned quietly and peered over Sam's shoulder. Looking at Frodo, he shut his eyes and crawled away without a sound. Sam came to him a moment later and found him chewing something and muttering to himself. On the ground beside him lay 2 small rabbits, which he was beginning to eye greedily.
Smeagol always hopes, he said. He has brought rabbits, nice rabbits. But Master is going to sleep, and perhaps Sam won't sleep. Doesn't want rabbits now? Smeagol tries to help, but he didn't catch things all in a minute.
Dairy doesn't mess with your gut, that's good to know. Sam, however, had no objection to rabbit at all and said so. At least, not to cooked rabbit. All hobbits, of course, can cook, for they begin to learn the art before their letters, which many never reach. But Sam was a good cook even by hobbit reckoning, and he had done a good deal of the camp cooking on their travels, when there was a chance. He still hopefully carried some of his gear in his pack, a small tinderbox, 2 small shallow pans, the smaller fitting into the larger, inside them a wooden spoon, a short 2-pronged fork, and some skewers were stowed, and hidden at the bottom of his pack in a flat wooden box a dwindling treasure, some salt. But he needed a fire, and other things besides. He thought for a bit, while he took out his knife, cleaned it and wetted it, and began to dress the rabbits. He was not going to leave Frodo alone asleep, even for a few minutes. "Now, Gollum," he said, "I've got another job for you. Go and fill these pans with water and bring 'em back."
Smeagol will fetch water, yes, said Gollum. But what does the hobbit want all that water for? He has drunk, he has watched.
"Never you mind," said Sam. "If you can't guess, you'll soon find out, and the sooner you fetch the water, the sooner you'll learn. Don't you damage one of my pans, or I'll carve you into mincemeat." While Gollum was away, Sam took another look at Frodo. He was still sleeping quietly, but Sam was now struck most by the leanness of his face and hands. "Too thin and drawn he is," he muttered. "Not right for a hobbit. If I can get these conies cooked, I'm going to wake him up." Sam gathered a pile of the driest fern and then scrambled up the bank, collecting a bundle of twigs and a broken wood. The fallen branch of cedar at the top gave him a good supply. He cut out some turves at the foot of the bank just outside the fern brake, and made a shallow hole and laid his fuel in it. Being handy with flint and tinder, he soon had a small blaze going. It made little or no smoke at all, but gave off an aromatic scent. He was just stooping over the fire, shielding it and building it up with heavier wood when Gollum returned, carrying the pans carefully and grumbling to himself. He set the pans down and then suddenly saw what Sam was doing. He gave a thin, hissing shriek, and seemed to be both frightened and angry.
"Ah, no," he cried. "No! Silly hobbits, foolish, yes, foolish, they mustn't do it."
"Mustn't do what?" asked Sam in surprise.
"Not make the nasty red tongues," hissed Gollum. "Fire! Fire! It's dangerous, yes it is. It burns, it kills, and it will bring enemies, yes it will."
"I don't think so," said Sam. "Don't see why it should if you don't put wet stuff on it and make it a smother. But if it does, it does. I'm going to risk it anyhow. I'm going to stew these conies."
"Stew the rabbits!" squealed Gollum in dismay. "Spoil beautiful meat Smeagol saved for you, poor hungry Smeagol. What for? What for, silly hobbit? They are young. They are tender. They are nice. Eat them! Eat them!"
He clawed at the nearest rabbit, already skinned and laying by the fire. "Not now," said Sam. "Each to his own fashion. Our bread chokes you, and raw coney chokes me. If you give me a coney, the coney's mine, see to cook, if I have a mind, and I have. You needn't watch me. Go and catch another and eat it as you fancy, somewhere private and out of my sight. Then you won't see the fire, and I shan't see you, and we'll both be the happier. I'll see the fire don't smoke, if that's any comfort to you." Gollum withdrew, grumbling, and crawled into the fern. Sam busied himself with his pans. "What a hobbit needs with coney," he said to himself, "is some herbs and roots, especially taters, not to mention bread. Herbs we can manage, seemingly. Gollum," he called softly. "Third time pays for all. I want some herbs." Gollum's head peeped out of the fern, but his looks were neither helpful nor friendly. "A few bay leaves, some thyme and sage will do before the water boils," said Sam.
"No," said Gollum. "Smeagol is not pleased, and Smeagol doesn't like smelly leaves. He doesn't eat grasses or roots. No, precious, not till he's starving or very sick, poor Smeagol.
Sam is very practical, yes. By the way, Alice, would you share that chili mac recipe? Is that something that you would do? Smeagol will get into real true hot water when this water boils if he don't do as he's asked, growled Sam. Sam will put his head in it, yes, precious, and I'd make him look for turnips and carrots and taters too if it was that time of the year. I bet they say all sort of good things are running wild in this country. I'd give a lot for half a dozen taters.
Smeagol won't go. Oh, no, precious, not this time, hissed Gollum. He's frightened, and he's very tired, and this hobbit's not nice at all. Smeagol won't grub for roots and carrots and taters. What's taters, precious? What's taters?
Potatoes, said Sam. The gaffer's delight, and rare good ballast for an empty belly. But you won't find any, so you needn't look. But be good, Smeagol, and fetch me the herbs, and I'll think better of you. Once more, if you turn over a new leaf and keep it turned, I'll cook you some taters one of these days. I will. Fresh fish and chips, served by S. Gamgee. You couldn't say no to that.
Yes, we could. Spoiling nice fish, scorching it. Give me fish now and keep nasty chips.
Oh, you're hopeless, said Sam. Go to sleep. In the end, he had to find what he wanted for himself, but he did not have far to go, not out of sight of the place where his master lay still sleeping. For a while Sam sat musing and tending the fire till the water boiled. The daylight grew and the air became warm. The dew faded off turf and leaf. Soon the rabbits cut up lay simmering in their pans with the bunched herbs. Almost Sam fell asleep as time went by. He let them stew for close on an hour, testing them now and again with his fork and tasting the broth. And by the way, that whole the potatoes, that's one of those things that people see in the movie and they think, well, that probably wasn't in the book. You're right. Oh, thank you, Alice. That's just too funny. Tolkien probably didn't write anything like that. No, Tolkien wrote a lot of really funny stuff, and that definitely. I love to tell people that who see the movies first. I'll say, well, that was in the book, and they go, that was in the book. That's so funny, I said the only thing is he doesn't say mash him, boil him, put him in a stew. Oh, I mean, he might have, but said such a thing, but he didn't. Instead, it was rare ballast for an empty belly. But yeah, the potatoes, that's in the book. A lot of people are surprised to hear that. When he thought all was ready, he lifted the pans off the fire and crept along to Frodo. Frodo half opened his eyes as Sam stood over him, and then he wakened from his dreaming, another gentle, unrecoverable dream of peace. "Hello, Sam," he said. "Not resting? Is anything wrong? What is the time?" "About a couple of hours after daybreak," said Sam, "and nigh on 8:30 by Shire clocks, maybe. But nothing's wrong. Though it ain't quite what I'd call right. No stock, no onions, no taters. I've got a nice bit of stew for you, and some broth, Mr. Frodo. Do you good. You'll have to sup it up in your mug or straight from the pan when it's cooled a bit. I haven't brought no bowls nor nothing proper." By the way, got a shout out to jalapeno pizza. It does sound really good, right? I've had jalapenos on pizza, but never dried jalapeno on pizza. That does sound like it would make a good seasoning, because sometimes you'll add like some red pepper flakes, that sort of thing, garlic. I just wanted to just mention here. Oh, now it's gone out of my head. Darn. Well, I guess I'll mention also that, Sam's carrying around these cast iron pots and everything and all this stuff, which is really funny. And even then he goes through all this trouble and then he's even saying, I wish it was better. I don't even have any onions or anything. Oh, I just remembered. So this is not in the book, but in the film, there's that scene where Éowyn brings Aragorn some stew. And he eats it, and it's disgusting, and he goes to spit it out, but then she looks at him, and he has to pretend like it's good. And one of my favorite things to point out about that is if you because your eyes are on Aragorn throughout the scene until she enters. But if you look into the background while Aragorn's talking, you can see Éowyn going from person to person, offering up her stew to all these people, and they're all turning her down. Oh no, I don't want that, And I think it's because they all know that she can't cook, so she's trying her best, and Aragorn is blissfully ignorant of the fact that she can't cook, so he tries it and it's not very good. I would love to see something. Maybe somebody could make a cartoon of this where the movie version of Éowyn gets a cooking lesson from Sam. I think that would make a great little sketch, where he teaches her how to actually make stew. Oh, I mean, it would have to be the movie version of Éowyn, because the book version of Éowyn probably doesn't cook, right? She makes it pretty clear that she's not much for any sort of domestic stuff. But in the movie, I should say, she was trying. She tried to make stew. She didn't succeed at it, I wouldn't say, because I don't know who made that. The food for the movie, like for the scene, but it looked disgusting. So I can imagine they probably had all sorts of people to make food props, and they like, just make some stew that looks really, really nasty. I'm not sure that I would be able to try that. I don't know. Depends on how it smelled. But Aragorn, he tried, probably the bravest thing he ever did. Dinner tonight for you is pan-fried sweet potatoes. It's interesting, Deb. I don't actually like sweet potatoes. I only like the regular kind of potatoes. The sweet potatoes are just like too sweet for me. I like a nice starchy potato, But I'm sure you'll enjoy that. But I'm just putting it out there. I want to see this made. I want to see somebody make like a cartoon or something. Or even if it's just not anime, even if it's just like a comic strip or something. Yeah, Alice, you don't like sweet potatoes either. They have a weird texture. I've tried them in different forms. I've tried the fries. I've tried chips and everything. The chips were the closest to something that I would eat. But still, then I was like, it would be way better if it was just regular potatoes, and because that aftertaste was still there. But I really want to see the movie version of Éowyn, who can't make stew, can't cook, get a cooking lesson from Sam. Just, hey, she's like, Sam, here, I made some stew, eat it. And he'd be polite. And he'd be like, I'm going to teach you how to make stew. That's what I want to see. I'll voice it. I'll voice Sam in it. Somebody's got to make this, though. All right, let's continue here. Frodo yawned and stretched. You should have been resting, Sam, he said, and lighting a fire was dangerous in these parts. But I do feel hungry. Can I smell it from here? What have you stewed? A present from Smeagol, said Sam. A brace of young conies, though I fancy Gollum's regretting them now. But there's naught to go with them but a few herbs. Sam and his master sat just within the fern brake and ate their stew from the pans, sharing the old fork and spoon. They allowed themselves half a piece of the elvish way bread each. It seemed a feast. Phew, Gollum, Sam called out, and whistled softly. Come on, still time to change your mind. There's some left if you want to try stewed coney. There was no answer. Oh, well, I suppose he's gone off to find something for himself. We'll finish it, said Sam. And then you must take some sleep, said Frodo. Don't you drop off while I'm nodding, Mr. Frodo. I don't feel too sure of him. There's a good deal of stinker, the bad Gollum, if you understand me, in him still, and he's getting stronger again. Not but what I think he'd try to throttle me first now. We don't see eye to eye, and he's not pleased with Sam. Oh, no, precious, not pleased at all. They finished, and Sam went off to the stream to rinse his gear. As he stood up to return, he looked back up the slope. At that moment he saw the sun rise out of the reek or haze or dark shadow or whatever it was that lay ever to the east, and it sent its golden beams down upon the trees and glades about him. Then he noticed a thin spiral of blue-grey smoke, plain to see as it caught the sunlight, rising from a thicket above him. With a shock he realized that this was the smoke from his little cooking fire which he had neglected to put out. That won't do. Never thought it would show like that, he muttered, and he started to hurry back. Suddenly he halted and listened. Had he heard a whistle or not? Or was it the call of some strange bird? If it was a whistle, it did not come from Frodo's direction. There it went again, from another place. Sam began to run as well as he could uphill. He found that a small brand, burning away to its outer end, had kindled some fern at the edge of the fire, and the fern blazing up had set the turf smouldering. Hastily he stamped out what was left of the fire, scattered the ashes, and laid the turves on the whole. Then he crept back to Frodo. "Did you hear a whistle, and what sounded like an answer?" he asked. "A few minutes back. I hope it was only a bird, but it didn't sound quite like that. More like somebody mimicking a bird call, I thought. And I'm afraid my bit of fire's been smoking. Now if I've gone and brought trouble, I'll never forgive myself. Nor won't have a chance, maybe." "Hush," whispered Frodo. "I thought I heard voices." The two hobbits trussed their small packs, put them on ready to fight, and then crawled deep into the fern. They crouched, listening. Water. There was no doubt of the voices. They were speaking low and furtively, but they were near and coming nearer. Then quite suddenly one spoke clearly close at hand. Here is where the smoke came from," it said. "'Twill be nigh at hand, in the fern, no doubt. We shall have it like a coney in a trap. Then we shall learn what kind of thing it is." "Aye, and what it knows," said a second voice. At once 4 men came striding through the fern from different directions. Since flight and hiding were no longer possible, Frodo and Sam sprang to their feet, putting back to back and whipping out their small swords. If they were astonished at what they saw, their captors were even more astonished. 4 tall men stood there. 2 had spears in their hands with broad, bright heads. 2 had great bows, almost of their own height, and great quivers of long, green-feathered arrows. All had swords at their sides and were clad in green and brown of varied hues, as if better to walk unseen in the glades of Ithilien. Green gauntlets covered their hands, and their faces were hooded and masked with green, except for their eyes, which were very clear and bright. At once Frodo thought of Boromir, for these men were like him in stature and bearing, and in their manner of speech. Did Saruman think that Galadriel and Gandalf doomed themselves by destroying the ring when he met them on his way to the Shire? He certainly said that. Whether or not he actually thinks that is really up for debate. I would say yes. I would say that he really did think that. He really had become so twisted that he would think such a thing. And he learned very quickly, because when he died, his spirit came out of his body and looked to the west, and then was rebuked by a cold wind, which is a sort of the big get out of here from Manwë himself, the Lord of the Breath of Arda, the arbiter of winds of the world, and also the king of the world. So that was Saruman realizing, oh, I messed up, He projected himself onto others. That's an excellent statement. No notes. No, sorry, no notes. 10 out of 10 statement. That's exactly correct. An insulated flask to keep cold water so you don't have to worry about a bunch of water bottles and harder to forget or misplace. I would do that. I mean, I would probably have to pour the water bottles into it, but yeah, I could do that. Because often I'm like, okay, where's my water? If I had a big metal thing, it would probably stand out more, right? All right, here we are. Let's continue here. I'm meeting one of my favorite characters here. "We have not found what we sought," said one. "But what have we found?" "Not orcs," said another, releasing the hilt of his sword, which he had seized when he saw the glitter of sting in Frodo's hand. "Elves?" said a third, doubtfully. "Nay, not elves," said the fourth, the tallest, and as it appeared the chief among them. "Elves do not walk in Ithilien in these days, and elves are wondrous fair to look upon, or so 'tis said." "Meaning we're not, I take you," said Sam. "Thank you kindly. And when you finish discussing us, perhaps you'll say who you are, and why you can't let 2 tired travelers rest." The tall green man laughed grimly. "I am Faramir, captain of Gondor," he said. "But there are no travelers in this land, only the servants of the Dark Tower or of the White." "We are neither," said Frodo, "and travelers we are, whatever Captain Faramir may say." "Then make haste to declare yourselves and your errand," said Faramir. We have a work to do, and this is no time or place for riddling or parleying. Come. Where is the third of your company?" "The third?" "Yes, the skulking fellow that we saw with his nose in the pool down yonder." He had an ill-favoured look, some spying breed of orc, I guess, or a creature of theirs, but he gave us the slip by some fox trick. I do not know where he is, said Frodo. He is only a chance companion met upon our road, and I am not answerable for him. If you come upon him, spare him, bring him, or send him to us. He is only a wretched gangrel creature, but I have him under my care for a while. But as for us, we are hobbits of the Shire, far to the north and west, beyond many rivers. Frodo, son of Drogo, is my name, and with me is Samwise, son of Hamfast, a worthy hobbit in my service. We have come by long ways out of Rivendell, or Imladris, as some call it. Here Faramir started and grew intent. 7 companions we had. 1 we lost at Moria, the others we left at Parthgalen above Raurus. 2 of my kin, a dwarf there was also, and an elf and 2 men. They were Aragorn and Boromir, who said that he came out of Minas Tirith, a city in the south. Boromir! All the 4 men exclaimed. Boromir, son of the Lord Denethor, said Faramir, and a strange, stern look came into his face. You came with him. That is news indeed, if it be true. Know, little strangers, that Boromir, son of Denethor, was High Warden of the White Tower, and our Captain General. Sorely do we miss him. Who are you, then, and what had you to do with him? Be swift, for the sun is climbing. Are the riddling words known to you that Boromir brought to Rivendell? Frodo replied. Seek for the sword that was broken, and in Ladris it dwells. The words are known indeed, said Faramir in astonishment. It is some token of your truth that you know them. Aragorn, who I also named, is the bearer of the sword that was broken, said Frodo, and we are the halflings that the Rohirrim spoke of. That I see, said Faramir thoughtfully. Or I see that it might be so. And what is Isildur's bane? That is hidden, answered Frodo. Doubtless it will be made clear in time. We must learn more of this, said Faramir, and know what brings you so far east under the shadow of yonder. He pointed and said no name. But not now. We have business in hand. You are in peril, and you would not have gone far by field or road this day. There will be hard hand strokes nigh at hand ere the day is full, then death or swift flight back to Anduin. I will leave 2 to guard you. For your good, and for mine. Wise men trust not chance meeting on the road in this land. If I return, I will speak more with you. Farewell, said Frodo, bowing low. Think what you will, I am a friend of all enemies of the one enemy. We would go with you if we halfling folk could hope to serve you, such doughty men and strong as you seem, and if my errand permitted it, may the light shine on your swords. The halflings are courteous folk, whatever else they be, said Faramir. Farewell. The hobbits sat down again, but they said nothing to one another of their thoughts and doubts. Close by, just under the dappling shadow of the dark bay trees, 2 men remained on guard. They took off their masks now and began to cool them, as the day heat grew, and Frodo saw that they were goodly men, pale-skinned, dark of hair, and with grey eyes and faces sad and proud. They spoke together in soft voices, at first using the common speech, but after the manner of older days, and then changing to another language of their own. To his amazement, as he listened, Frodo became aware that it was the Elvish tongue that they spoke, or one a little different, and he looked at them with wonder, for he knew then that they must be the Dunedain of the south, men of the line of the lords of Westerness. So Westerness is, oh no. Did it die again? Moogle's saying the stream died again, but I don't see any issues. Are you sure? Let me check on YouTube. I think that one was on your end, Moogle. I'm not seeing any indication that there was a problem. And Alice said it didn't. No, that Moogle's internet is not the greatest. I think that might have been just on his end. Because the view count is still up, closing in on 40 here, and I can see the stream playing. So we're good. Yeah. No, that was just one person's issue. Thankfully, it wasn't on my end this time. Yeah, the YouTube side is good. The Twitch side is all good. Just one person had an issue. I just had to be sure because of all the problems we had earlier, you know. Okay, I was going to pause there anyway, because I was just going to point out some of the linguistics here. He mentions that they speak the common speech, which is called Westron, but they're kind of speaking an older form of it. And then he says that they're speaking sort of a form of Elvish, and what he's actually hearing is what's called Gondor Sindarin, where it is the Sindarin language, but it's the Gondor dialect. At Westerness, of course, that refers to Numenor. That's the common speech name of Numenor. Numenor actually has a ton of different names. In Quenya, it was even at one point called Atalanta. And Tolkien was very pleased because he came up with Numenor first, and then he said, well, if I Quenyize it, it becomes Atalanta, and that sounds like Atlantis, and that's a happy thing, because that's what it was based on. He didn't even plan it that way, it just happened that way. So it was one of the sort of like happy linguistic quirks that came out of that. And if you guys know me, and that I study Tolkien, and I've studied Tolkien for decades, my favorite aspect of it is the linguistics and the languages, so I love things like that. But yeah, so he's here in Gondor Sindarin. And it's interesting because there's a line that happened early on in Book 2 between Bilbo and Frodo, and Aragorn was there as well, when Bilbo kept referring to his friend the Dunedain. And then, he finds out the Dunedain is Aragorn, or as he knows him, Strider. And he says, wow, you have so many names. And you're Strider, you're Aragorn, you're Dunedain. And Bilbo's like, not Dunedain, the Dunedain, man of the West, from Numenor. I thought I taught you enough Elvish that you would know this. So, what's interesting is that Frodo was taught Elvish by Bilbo, but he's constantly coming into these instances where he doesn't really understand it, like with the One Ring. He looks at it and he says, it's something like Elvish, but I can't read it because it's Elvish writing, but it's written in Black speech. And then here we have, well, they're talking in some strange language. And wait a minute, I think it's Elvish, but it's different. That's because it's the Gondor dialect. So while he understood Gildor very well, when Gildor spoke Sindarin, and he understood Aragorn and and Glorfindel and whatnot, now he's running into this other dialect that he doesn't quite know. So there we go. Let's continue here. After a while he spoke to them, but they were slow and cautious in answering. They named themselves Mablung and Damrod, soldiers of Gondor, and they were rangers of Ithilien, for they were descended from folk who lived in Ithilien at one time before it was overrun. From such men the Lord Denethor chose his furriers, who crossed the Anduin secretly, how or where they would not say, to harry the orcs and other enemies that roam between the Efelduath and the river. It is close on 10 leagues hence to the east shore of Anduin, said Mablung, and we seldom come so far afield. But we have a new errand on this journey. We come to ambush the men of Harad. Curse them. Aye, curse the Southrods, said Damrod. 'Tis said that there were many dealings of old between Gondor and the kingdoms of the Harad in the far south, though there was never friendship. In those days our bounds were away south beyond the mouths of Anduin, and Umbar, the nearest to their realms, acknowledged our sway. But that is long since. I'm not going to get into the whole history of Umbar, but I will say that if you go to my Quora account and you search Umbar, I have a very long article that I wrote of the whole history of the region and how it relates to Gondor. I also, I did do it in a YouTube video, although I'm not sure which one it is. It might have been one of the thumbnail questions. I'm not sure. One of these days, I'm going to go back through the videos and make sort of an index, but I just haven't found the time to do that just yet. 'Tis many lives of men since any passed to or fro between us. Now of late we have learned that the enemy has been among them, and they are gone over to him or back to him. They were ever ready to his will, as have so many also in the east. I doubt not that the days of Gondor are numbered, and the walls of Minas Tirith are doomed, so great is his strength and malice. But still we will not sit idle and let him do as he would, said Mablung. These cursed Southrons come now marching up the ancient roads to swell the hosts of the Dark Tower, yea, up to the very road that craft of Gondor was made. And they go ever more heedlessly, we learn, thinking that the power of their new master is great enough, so that mere shadow of his heels will protect them. We come to teach them another lesson. Great strength of them was reported to us some days ago, marching north. One of the regiments is due by our reckoning to pass by some time ere noon, up on the road the road above, where it passes through the Cloven Way. The road may pass, but they shall not while Faramir is captain. He leads now in all perilous ventures, but his life is charmed, or fate spares him for some other end. Their talk died down to a listening silence. All seemed still and watchful. Sam, crouched by the edge of the fernbrake, peered out. With his keen hobbit eyes he saw that many more men were about. He could see them stealing up the slopes. singly or in long files, keeping always to the shade or grove or thicket, or crawling hardly visible in their brown and green raiment, though grass and brake. All were hooded and masked and had gauntlets on their hands, and they were armed like Faramir and his companions. Before long they had all passed and vanished. The sun rose till it neared the south, the shadows shrank. "I wonder where that dratted Gollum is," thought Sam, as he crawled back into deeper shade. "He stands a fair chance of being spotted for an orc or being roasted by the yellow face, but I fancy he'll look after himself." He lay down beside Frodo and began to doze. He woke, thinking he had heard horns blowing. He sat up. It was now high noon. The guards stood alert and tense in the shadow of the trees. Suddenly the horns rang out louder and beyond mistake from above, over the top of the slope. Sam thought that he heard cries and wild shouting also, but the sound was faint, as if it came from some distant cave. Then presently the noise of fighting broke out near at hand, and just above their hiding place he could hear plainly the ringing grate of steel on steel, the clang of sword on iron cap, the dull beat of blade on shield. Men were yelling and screaming, and one clear, loud voice was calling, "Gondor! Gondor!" "It sounds like 100 blacksmiths all smithying together," said Sam to Frodo. "They're as near as I want them now." But the noise grew closer. "They are coming!" cried Damrod. "See, some of the Southrons have broken the trap and are coming from the road. There they go. Our men are after them, and the captain leading." Sam, eager to see more, went now and joined the guards. He scrambled a little way up under the larger of the bay trees. For a moment he caught a glimpse of swarthy men in red, running down the slope some way, with green-clad warriors leaping after them, hewing them down as they fled. Arrows were thick in the air. Then suddenly, straight over the rim of their sheltering bank, a man fell, crashing through the slender trees nearly on top of them. He came to rest in the fern a few feet away, face downward, green arrow feathers sticking from his neck below a golden collar. His scarlet robes were tattered, his corselet of overlapping brazen plates was rent and hewn. His black plaits of hair braided with gold were drenched with blood. His brown hands still clutched the hilt of a broken sword. By the way, just to point out, you'll notice, and I pointed this out a little while ago, and this is becoming more and more true as we go along, that the narrative is shifting much more to Sam than it is to Frodo. Like I said, they're sort of both telling the story, but it's becoming more and more Sam as we go. It was Sam's first view of a battle of men against men, and he did not like it much. He was glad that he could not see the dead face. He wondered what the man's name was, and where he came from, and if he was really evil of heart, or what lies or threats had led him on the long march from his home, and if he would not really rather have stayed there in peace, all in a flash of thought which was quickly driven from his mind. For just as Mablung stepped toward the fallen body, there was a new noise, great crying and shouting. Amidst it Sam heard a shrill bellowing or trumpeting, and then a great thudding and bumping like huge rams dinning on the ground. Where?" cried Damrod to his companion. "May the Valar turn him aside! Mumak! Mumak!" Two things. One, I talked about this earlier when Sam recited his poem, The Oliphaunt. Well, not his poem, he didn't write it, but it's a poem that he knew. That the proper name of the animal that he's describing, that the hobbits call oliphants, is a mumak, or one is a mumak. Mumakil is the plural form of that. The other, though, is this is one of the very rare instances and where you see prayer in The Lord of the Rings. They're saying, "May the Valar turn him aside." The Valar being the high angels in the West. Tolkien did once refer to them as gods. He now says that's incorrect, although he understands that there are a lot of people in Middle-earth that would see them as gods. Now notice that he kept religion out of the text as much as he could. There's the themes of Catholicism that you see here and there, but because he wanted it to be something that anybody could read and enjoy, he didn't really put in a lot of cults and churches and things. We're to understand these things absolutely exist. There are religions in Middle-earth. We just don't hear about them. Unfinished Tales talks about it a little bit more. But he kept it out of The Lord of the Rings. And this is one of two instances where somebody actually prays. The other also involves Faramir. So it's interesting where he's showing here that the faithful still exist, the faithful of Numenor, and that they're here, and that Faramir and his company are the most faithful. And Gandalf also makes a comment about Faramir where he says, out of all the Numenorians in Middle-earth, he's like the most Numenorian, you know. So let's continue onwards here. To his astonishment and terror and lasting delight, Sam saw a vast shape crash out of the trees and come careening down the slope. Big as a house, much bigger than the house it looked to him, a grey-clad moving hill. Fear and wonder maybe enlarged him in the hobbit's eyes, but the Mumak of Harad was indeed a beast of vast bulk, and the like of him does not walk now in Middle-earth. His kin that live still in the latter days are but memories of his girth and majesty. On he came straight towards the watchers, and then swerved aside in the nick of time, passing only a few yards away, rocking the ground beneath their feet, his great legs like trees, enormous sail-like ears spread out, long snout upraised like a large serpent about to strike, his small red eyes raging. What a long sentence that was, but constructed properly. And there we see the prayer is answered. There's no real reason for the Mumak to swerve out of their way. But we saw it. Damrod prayed to the Valar, and then the Valar made it happen. So we see there is divine intervention in The Lord of the Rings. A lot of people point to the moment of truth, the big climax where the ring is destroyed. And Tolkien explained that it was divine intervention. A lot of people didn't like that. They would say, why would you do this thing where, you're erasing what the heroes did? And just saying, well, at the end, Iluvatar did it all, and he didn't do it all, but he destroyed the ring, and he destroyed Gollum, and there wasn't anything like that in the book. And I'm saying, but here it is, right here. This guy very clearly says, may the Valar turn him aside, and what happens? It turns aside. So, it's not like this thing doesn't exist, and it happens with Saruman. And it happens with the eagles arriving at the Black Gate. There is nobody that could make the eagles do that other than Manwë. Let's use Gwaihir as the perfect thing. For Gwaihir to go from the last time that he met Gandalf, just really complaining that, well, not the last time, but the time before that, why, you're so heavy, I'm not carrying you very far. I'm going to set you down in Rohan. I'm not carrying you all the way to Lothlorien. Are you insane? And then the second, the most recent time, he's not even letting him ride on his back. He's carrying him in his claws, and he's saying, boy, you're not as heavy as you used to be, And then Gandalf says, will you take me into Mordor? I ask one last time, will you let me ride on your back? Keep in mind, these two are equals, right? Gandalf and Gwaihir are both Maiar spirits. And Gwaihir says something really, really telling. He says, I would bear you whither you may go, even if you were made of stone. So he's saying, because he says, you won't find me so heavy. And he's saying, you know what? You could be a stone statue and I'd still take you anywhere you need to go, even into Mordor. And for Gwaihir to supplicate himself like that and revere Gandalf in that way is something that could only come from one of two things. One is just the deep respect of one angel to another and the amazing accomplishment that Gandalf has done, which is possible, but more probable is the fact that Manwë sent him there and told him to be at Gandalf's service. It's the only one that bosses the eagles around. The eagles are not a taxi service. They're not anybody's ride. They're not an Uber, but they are the birds of heaven. They are the eagles of Manwë. And what is it that blows away Sauron's form after the ring is destroyed? Because the ring is destroyed, but he's still attacking. He's coming after Gandalf and Aragorn and Imrahil. What happens? He's blown away by what? The wind from the west with a capital W. So yeah, divine intervention is all over the Lord of the Rings. We only have like half a page left, but I just had to get into that. Let's finish the chapter and then we'll go over everything more. His upturned horn-like tusks were bound with bands of gold and dripped with blood. His trappings of scarlet and gold flapped about him in wild tatters, the ruins of what seemed a very war tower. lay upon his heaving back, smashed in his furious passage through the woods, and high upon his neck still desperately clung a tiny figure, the body of a mighty warrior, a giant among the Swertings. On the great beast thundered, blundering in blind wrath through pool and thicket. Arrows skipped and snapped harmlessly about the triple hide of its flanks. Men of both sides fled before him, but many he overtook and crushed to the ground. Soon he was lost to view, still trumpeting and stamping far away. What became of him Sam never heard, whether he escaped to roam the wild for a time until he perished far from his home or was trapped in some deep pit, or whether he raged on until he plunged into the great river and was swallowed up. Sam drew a deep breath. "An oliphant it was," he said. "So there are oliphants, and I have seen one. What a life! But no one at home will ever believe me. Well, if that's over, I'll have a bit of sleep." "Sleep while you may," said Mablung, "but the captain will return if he is unhurt, and when he comes we shall depart swiftly. We shall be pursued as soon as news of our deed reaches the enemy, and that will not be long." "Go quietly when you must," said Sam. "No need to disturb my sleep. I was walking all night." Mablung laughed. "I do not think the captain will leave you here, Master Samwise," he said, "but you shall see." That's the end of that chapter. So we did get through 2 chapters. Like I said, I was thinking of stopping after 1 because of all the issues we had with the stream going down multiple times. But I think just my internet must have just been having a little bit of an issue for a while. That is actually easily my favorite chapter in book 4. I just love everything about it. I love how focused it is on Sam. I love Frodo's snark. I love Sam imitating Gollum. I love Faramir's entrance. Everything. The description of Ithilien is absolute poetry, as I said, reminiscent of T.S. Eliot. The description of the rampage, the battle, of course, in the rampage of the Mumak is amazing. Definitely out of everything in Chapter 4, that's my favorite. And of course, we have some really great stuff to get to. The next couple of chapters, The Window on the West, and then we have The Forbidden Pool, Journey to the Crossroads, The Stairs of Cirith Ungol, Shelob's Lair, and The Choices of Master Samwise rounds out the 2 towers. So obviously it'll take more than 1 stream to get through all of that. But yeah. And I was going to wait until I got to A Window in the West to talk more about the film version, but boy, did they mangle Faramir. I just that's probably there's a few things here and there where I'll kind of cringe during the movies. Aragorn beheading the mouth of Sauron is one of those things that makes me cringe. The scene in Return of the King Extended Edition where the Witch King breaks Gandalf's staff, that makes me cringe. But those are small little things. The biggest issue that I had is how, and I mentioned this earlier when we were talking about the films, is how some of the characters were just written incorrectly. I mentioned Frodo being one of the worst examples because he is ostensibly the biggest character in the whole thing. Faramir is really up there too. They really made him almost unrecognizable. The fact that he would decide that he is capturing the hobbits and then bringing them to Osgiliath is just absolutely ridiculous. It's so far out of character. And we see it there, Why did they surround them with weapons? Because they thought there was the enemy in the air. And then when they realized, hey, no, these guys are pretty cool. They've obviously met Boromir. There's some truth to what they're saying. But then a big battle happens. They put guards with them to keep them safe. And then they're going to take them with them. And yes, they're going to be blindfolded. They're not going to be bound, but they're going to be blindfolded just because they're being brought to a secret base. They're not captives, really. They're more like guests, And, Faramir has this moment where he has the option to bring Frodo and Sam to Minas Tirith. But is he really all that tempted? He thinks about it, and obviously he doesn't do anything of that sort. He doesn't do anything of that sort. And then it's even yes, there is that one guy who's like, hey, you might be in a lot of trouble for this. And he's just like, oh, well, whatever, When is Faramir not in trouble, right? But yeah, I gotta say, that's like one of the big things that, like I said, if there was another like a remake of the Lord of the Rings, if they could fix one big thing, it's like, please fix these characters: Frodo, Faramir, Gimli, Denethor. Like, maybe, yeah, there might be more, but those are like the big four that I thought were just mangled, just completely mangled. Most of the characters are pretty spot on, but those four were unrecognizable. I mean, I would like Merry to be fixed too, but I understand, the chance to make Merry into a bit more of a comical character, and they didn't go completely overboard with that, thankfully. But yeah, the big four: Frodo, Faramir, Gimli, and Denethor. Those four like really need to be fixed. The only other one that I come to is Elrond, and not because he was written wrong, but because I just think that Hugo Weaving didn't understand the character. Even though he seemed to really enjoy playing the character, he just couldn't turn off the Hugo Weaving. You know what I mean? That intensity that he has, that smoldering gaze, even when he smiles, it looks like he's thinking of killing you. And I'm just like, oh, that's not Elrond, is it now? But that was more on the fault of the actor, not so much on the fault of the casting. Oh, hey, Kevin. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We enjoy having you when we're watching stuff, and I'm glad you're here at the stream as well. We're just about to end. I'm going to go over just some of the. Oh, no problem, no problem. Like I said, I'm just starting to end everything here. Your hands are in dishwater, and you're still. I hope your hands are not wet when you're typing, because you might mess up your phone. Well, these days these phones are usually pretty waterproof, right? Or at least water resistant. As long as you don't get the charging port wet, you're good to go. Schedule wise, if you're watching this on Twitch, we stream every day, and I will be live tomorrow afternoon with Dragon Quest 2, and then Saturday with Xenoblade, and Sunday Mega Man. All the usual stuff. Monday Street Fighter 6. If you're watching this on YouTube, we will be live next Thursday at the same time. That's the 15th. And it's going to be a gaming stream. We're going to play the Two Towers game on the PlayStation 2, which, unlike the previous game that I played, the Fellowship of the Ring, that was based on the books. This one is based on the films, but of course, since it's a video game, it has to expand certain aspects. So you'll actually see some stuff that wasn't in the movies, but was in the books, or some stuff that's completely made up, of course. And we're going to talk, of course, about what they got right, what they got wrong, what it feels like to come back to that kind of game after so long. But that's what we're going to do next Thursday. In 2 weeks, on the 22nd, I'm going to do another reading. So we'll be right back here reading the Two Towers, not in a month, but in 2 weeks. And then in 4 weeks, that's February 1st, we'll be back with the Council of Tolkien. I'll have Sid and Matt with me for our big round table, of course. Maybe one day you'll ask me what I thought of the recent Gollum game. I was going to get that game and play it, and then I saw the reviews, and I thought, you know what, maybe one day if it's on sale for like really cheap, it would be fun to sort of roll through just to see how bad it really is. But yeah, I thought that was a great idea for a game, because there was a lot of traveling that Gollum did that's not explicitly covered in The Lord of the Rings, especially his escape from Mordor. And we talked about that a little while ago when he talked about coming out of Cirith Ungol. And yeah, lots and lots of potential for a Gollum game, and for him to sort of like escape, orcs and elves and all sorts of things. But then when I actually saw it and saw the reviews and everything, it's like, wow, that doesn't look very good. Also, even before it came out, I was a little iffy on it, and I'll tell you why. Because they announced some paid DLC, and there were 2 types of paid DLC for the Lord of the Rings Gollum. One was emote packs, which is ridiculous for a single player game that has no online thing. So, you could make him dance or whatever. There's no reason for that. emote packs are ridiculous. The other thing was actually a language pack that would make some of the characters speak Sindarin instead of English, which should have been in the game already. And their excuse was, well, it's very difficult to find people who speak Sindarin because it is an incredibly difficult language and it's not a very complete language. And so you have to pay those people. And I thought, well, that should have been budgeted into the game to begin with. Having NPCs and background characters speak a different language is not worth forking over extra money. You know, that's ridiculous. But yeah. Why is Gollum called Gollum and Smeagol? So Smeagol, I'm going to type the correct spelling there because it's not that. That's the correct spelling. Smeagol is his actual name. That's what his mom called him. You know, that was his real name. Gollum is a nickname that was given to him because of the noise he made when he cleared his throat. Gollum, Gollum. So he was sort of this nasty sort of character. Keep in mind, he's a hobbit, right? So he was growing up with all these other hobbits. He's a bully. He's a creep. He's a nasty guy. And then one day, him and his friend go off on a fishing trip, and then he comes back without his friend, and, you know, nobody knows what happened. Obviously, we know what happened. We know that he murdered his friend. And now, all of a sudden, he can turn invisible, and he starts gurgling and making these noises. Gollum, Gollum. So they started calling him Gollum, and they ran him out of their community. And then he went into the darkness, and he went insane. He was insane from the ring. He was insane from the guilt of murdering somebody. He lost his mind, and he forgot his name. And it was later when, and they're going to make a movie version of this, by the way. It's called The Hunt for Gollum. It's supposed to come out next year in 2027. But Gandalf actually managed to draw a lot of the truth out of him. And he's not like a goblin, no. No, he's not like a goblin. He's more like a ghoul Moogle. You know, he's like a ghoul, not like a goblin. Goblins are, you know, orcs and such, but he's like a ghoul. He's just become physically what he's like mentally, you know, and then he eats dead things and babies and stuff like that. You know, he's just a creepy guy. He's completely not a good person even before, you know, Sauron's power came to, you know, be in his hand like that. And that, you know, drove him even more crazy than it was already. But yeah, no, Smeagol is his real name, though. That's like his actual name. And he had a friend named Deagle, and he murdered him because Deagle found the ring in the river, you know. So that's where that comes in. The name Smeagol is related to the word smeal, which is like a burrowing sort of motion, and also that's what the hobbits called their home, smeals. And it's the same sort of reason that you get Smaug and some other names like that. So, yeah, learned a little bit more. Hey, that's what I do. Ted, do you follow my YouTube? I don't even know if you do. You should, because you'll learn a lot about the lore. You know what I'm saying? I have so many of these books. You know. Knowing about his past and personality, actually, it was interesting, is not talked about in The Lord of the Rings. Like, we know about when Deagle found the ring and then Smeagol murdered him. But the beyond that, like what we know of how much of a nasty person he was, and Deagle wasn't a good person either. That actually came from one of Tolkien's letters. And, it's too far away for me to grab, but I have all of his letters as a book, you know, like I said, there's so many of these books, and that's what I study. So, like I said, if you ever have any questions like that, like I said, that is literally what I do, is I answer people's questions about the lore and the linguistics and the spirituality and all that stuff. Anyway, guys, if you're watching on YouTube, the live is about to end. I do apologize that there were some parts where the live did end and then restart. And that, you know, it took a while for people to find me again because of the way that YouTube works. The lives are going to go away. I'm going to private them. I'm going to edit the 3 pieces into one and put that up as a video. I'll do that probably this weekend or something. I don't know when I'll do it. I'll do it as soon as I can. But I don't want those like fragments out there like that for people to watch. If you're watching on Twitch, we're going to raid somebody. So let's find somebody to raid. So thank you for everybody on both platforms that came out tonight. Those of you that are on Twitch, we are going to raid. Definitely not you. I'm going to raid Dan. He's playing Bloodborne. Why not? Oh, that is a loud ad. Let's Your neighbor's house got hit by lightning. I hope a fire didn't start. But my house got hit by lightning once, and first of all, it was the loudest thing I've ever experienced. And secondly, it killed a bunch of our electronics. Like one of the TVs was killed by the lightning, and something else too. I forgot what it was. It was like the TV and something else died. So it can be pretty devastating. Hopefully there was no major damage. Let's raid Dan. I think a raid call simply of potatoes will work, right? Yeah, so we're going to raid Dan. He's playing Bloodborne. It looks like he stepped away for a moment, but there's the raid call. Copy that, paste it as we head into Dan's stream. Thank you to the YouTube audience. Love you guys. Languages of Middle-earth, a complete Tolkien companion, and a silver book you can't find. Oh, well, let me know in a comment what you got. Yeah, that's pretty cool, though. Great gifts right there. All right, here we go, guys. We're going to end now.